fighting with one another for long. United Kingdoms was different kingdoms fighting against one another. And it was not a bad idea to unite and stop fighting, of course, and make it a unitary thing where we don't kill. We disagree. We go to Westminster and debate and insult one another. That's fine. But we don't kill one another. I think we should, it's essential at this point, given the nuclear war, given everything, that we do that at the scale of the planet. And I think there's a lot of people who are asking that. I mean, stop trying to resolve the problems by massacring one another. And so I would like, with many other, to, a little drop toward a world where we discuss instead of killing one another.
Carlo Rovelli, we must end there. I thank you very much for being on Hard Talk. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
That was Hard Talk. I'm Jeff Goods. You're listening to CBC Radio 1. Have a great day.
Good morning, Manitoba, and welcome to Tuesday, March 5th. I'm Marcy Marcusa. This is Information Radio. You're on CBC, 89.3 FM, 990 AM, or maybe you're on the app or on YouTube. And thank you so much for joining us. Our show is on air till 8:37 AM, the morning show. And if you have any issues out there in traffic, call us, 788-3093. Already, I can tell you that school is open, but buses are not running today in the Park West School Division. Buses are also canceled today in the Rolling River School Division, but school is open. Of course, Western Manitoba, especially around Brandon, just getting walloped with all of that snow. My drive-in in Winnipeg this morning, all of your main streets seem to be free of snow now. A lot of that's melted down, and still some crews out there, though, working on sidewalks and such. So take it easy underfoot. Good morning, Brad Lillies behind the YouTube controls. Good morning, Corey Funk, who is directing the show, and we'll cover that commute. And good morning to Abby Adeyemi, my friend behind the technical controls of the program. Abby, of course, will cover weather on air. Heather Wells is with us also from our news center, and she's here with headlines. Good morning.
Good morning. The Manitoba man who was accused of killing his baby boy is on trial this week. Matthew Morrow, charged with manslaughter and aggravated assault in the death of 3-month-old Maven Gillis Morrow. Maven was found unconscious while being watched by his father in January of 2020. The little boy died in hospital. We are going to hear about the first day of testimony in this judge-only trial coming up. As well, the Winnipeg Regional Health Authority needs help finding its stolen Street Connections van. The health authority says the vehicle used for its evening outreach program was stolen over the weekend. That van drives around the city 6 evenings a week, providing harm reduction services. We'll hear more in our next local news at 6:30.
All right. Thank you, Heather.
You're welcome.
Well, tomorrow morning, actually, we're going to be on location at the Salvation Army, right in the heart of an area that sees some of the people with some of the greatest challenges, but one of the biggest ones is just needing a place to live. So we're going to hear more of those stories, and actually we're going to hear more about their van that takes to the streets of Winnipeg as well. Today on the show, though, let's talk about what is happening with the cost of rent. A one-room apartment just keeps going up all across the country. It's making previously cities that were affordable before unaffordable now. We're going to hear more about the national situation from an advocate. That's in the first hour. And we'll get some more details on Tuesday, Super Tuesday. That's when most states hold their primaries down south, so stay tuned.
Nelly Furtado is bringing the party to the 2024 Juno Awards. She's hosting Canada's biggest night of music with show-stopping performances by Maestro Fresh West, The Beaches, Charlotte Cardin, Josh Ross, Talk, Nelly Furtado herself, and many more. It's a party that you're never going to forget. Don't miss the 2024 Juno Awards, Sunday, March 24th at 8 Eastern on CBC and CBC Gem.
This is World Report. Good morning. I'm Marcia Young. Polls are already open in some American states. Today is Super Tuesday, the biggest day in the political calendar ahead of the November election. Millions of Democrats and Republicans in 15 states will decide their presidential preference. Richard Madden is following all of this from Washington. Richard, you are an avid observer of the political scene there. What are you watching for today?
Yeah, good morning. There'll be plenty to watch for. Now, on the one hand, former President Donald Trump is widely expected to dominate the 15 primary contests, scooping up the vast majority of delegates, including the big states like California and Texas, in a majority winner-take-all contest. But even if he does sweep the contest, he'll be shy of cementing the majority needed to lock down the presidential nomination. And he's reportedly frustrated that his sole challenger, Nikki Haley, is staying in the race. That's why perhaps the bigger drama is what her plans are after Super Tuesday. Haley has some delegates but is trailing far behind the former president. Now, she hasn't outlined what her plans are, but says about 30 to 40% of Republicans have rejected Trump so far, and she's contrasting herself as a refreshing alternative against two unpopular leaders. Take a listen.
This isn't an anti-Trump movement. This is a pro-America movement. This is something where they're saying they're tired of the chaos. They don't want two candidates in their 80s. They want to make sure that we go back to normal, and they want to see a D.C. that works for the people instead of people working for government.
Now, if she doesn't drop out, there's speculation that she's setting up a showdown at the Republican convention this summer. Now, on the Democratic side, President Joe Biden is widely expected to win that Super Tuesday sweep, setting up a rematch that, according to polls, 7 out of 10 Americans just don't want.
Richard, you mentioned Joe Biden. What is ahead for him after Super Tuesday?
Yeah, well, Super Tuesday is traditionally the kickoff moment into the general election, and we'll start to see the campaigning hit the accelerator. President Biden will deliver the State of the Union address on Thursday to a divided Congress, and he'll set the tone and lay out the choices for November.
Thank you, Richard.
Thank you.
The CBC's Richard Madden in Washington. Tensions between Germany and Russia are intensifying. The two countries are sparring over the alleged leak of military discussions surrounding Ukraine. German officials accuse Russia of leaking the intercepted recording. And now Germany's defense minister says it was the result of human error. Freelance reporter Rebecca Collard has the details.
At a press conference in Berlin, German Defense Minister Boris Pistorius tries to ease concerns about an explosive audio recording of German officers published in Russian media. He told journalists that it was not the result of a leak from personnel or Russian hacking, but rather carelessness by a participant that seems to have joined the call on the platform WebEx from a connection at a hotel in Singapore. The audio recording was shared by a journalist from the Russian state broadcaster RT. Senior German officers are discussing weapons transfers to Ukraine, and specifically the long-range Taurus missiles, which the German chancellor has been resistant to export to Kyiv, fearing the missiles could be used to strike inside Russia. The officers are also discussing targeting the Kerch Bridge, which connects Russia to occupied Crimea. Russian officials say it's proof that Germany plans to strike Russia and of Western military involvement in Ukraine. In the call, the officers discuss British military on the ground in Ukraine and their tactics. On Monday, the German ambassador to Russia refused to answer questions as he left the Russian Department of Foreign Affairs in Moscow. Pistorius says the incident was a Russian attempt to create divisions between German military and intelligence agencies, and that so far there have been no punitive measures taken against personnel. I will not sacrifice my best officers to Russia's games, said Pistorius. Pistorius also rebuffed questions today about how the leak had hurt Germany's credibility with NATO and other allies. Rebecca Collard for CBC News, Berlin.
Ukraine says it has sunk another Russian warship in the Black Sea. The country's military intelligence agency says the vessel destroyed was a large patrol ship. It can reportedly carry cruise missiles and about 60 crew. Kyiv says its forces are using high-tech sea drones. They're taking aim at targets deep behind the front line. Russian authorities have not confirmed the claim. Japan is expressing concern over China's rapidly expanding military.
A
spokesperson for the cabinet says Beijing poses, quote, the greatest strategic challenge for the peace and stability of Japan and the international community. China has announced an increase in defense spending this year. During an economic statement today at the National People's Congress, Premier Li Qiang said military spending would increase by more than 7%. That budget has more than doubled under Xi Jinping's tenure as president. It also comes as Beijing hardens its stance on Taiwan and increases its military activities in the South China Sea. The economic statement also sets an ambitious growth target of around 5% overall. Many analysts, though, question that, suggesting it is more likely to be just 1 or 2%. An alleged gang rape in eastern India has triggered public outrage. Police have arrested some of the men they believe attacked a foreign couple touring the region on motorcycles. The husband and wife say 7 men assaulted them and raped the woman for hours. The incident is again raising the issue of women's safety in India. Journalist Priyata Bajwasi has more from New Delhi.
The weekend attack has sparked anger across India after the woman who was gang raped posted to social media.
As a woman living in India, the question of safety is a constant concern. And the reality is that India is not safe for women.
If you feel completely safe in a place, you will be willing to take risks and, step out of your comfort zone, do the things you want to do. And that is completely missing from the way that we deal with women.
The state where the attack took place has announced a compensation of $12,000 for the couple. But activists say that the country needs to find ways to make the country safer for all women. Women's rights advocate Brinda Adige says India unfortunately puts the onus on women.
Instead of finding ways and means to address the issue of safety and protection of women, the system, the authorities, and the large number of male citizens only talked about how the victim must protect herself. It is time for us to place the responsibility and accountability on the mechanisms.
Nearly 90 rapes were reported in India every day in 2022. That's 1 woman raped every 18 minutes. But experts say that government data doesn't present a full picture. Many women don't speak out because of the stigma associated with sexual violence in India. Priyata Brajbasi for CBC News, New Delhi.
Here at home, Conservative Jamil Javani will represent the Ontario riding of Durham in the House of Commons. He won the by-election called to replace former Conservative leader Aaron O'Toole. Javani secured over 55% of the vote. Durham has been a Conservative stronghold for the last 20 years. Canada's prairies are in the grips of a multi-year drought. Farmers are concerned about their herds and livelihoods. The CBC's Julia Wong has more.
Talk is fast at this cattle auction in Thorsby, Alberta, 70 kilometers southwest of Edmonton. Auctioneer Chance Martin says the last year and a half, he's noticed farmers selling more livestock, and he says drought is to blame.
If they didn't get more grass or buy more land, everybody as a whole has pared back their herd for sure. A percentage, some have got right out of it.
Many ranchers in the stands here are watching prices and watching the weather.
What are you looking at?
Shane Bucksaw has been worried.
It's a tough game. You have to be very optimistic and hopefully we do get the moisture and everything and hopefully it helps us.
The prairies have been incredibly dry the last few years and there's little moisture in the ground. Recent snowfall helps, but it won't be enough.
Pastures aren't going to be 100% this year no matter how much moisture we get.
Trevor Hadwin is an agroclimate specialist with Agriculture and Agri-Food Canada. He says climate change is playing a role.
Yeah, certainly we're seeing more drought situations with the changing climate. We're seeing more extreme weather and more flops between wet and dry and more extreme situations.
Back in Thorsby, auctioneer Chance Martin worries about the long-term effects if drought persists and herds shrink.
It hurts the whole security of the food in Canada and across the world.
Reinforcing how what we put on the table is all dependent on what falls from the sky. Julia Wong, CBC News, Thorsby, Alberta.
And that is the latest national and international news from World Report. I'm Marcia Young.
Well, good morning, Manitoba. I'm Marcy Marcusa. Thanks for joining us on Information Radio. It is Tuesday, March 5th. You're on CBC, 89.3 FM, 990 AM, or on the app. or maybe on YouTube. Good morning if you're watching this morning online. This hour on the program, we're going to be having a couple of discussions about politics. Now, one of them is coming up at 10 to 7. The parliamentary reporter for the National Post will join us to talk about the ArriveCAN app. There's still questions about the procurement process. And this week, a House committee is going to hear testimony from some of the people involved. So we'll hear about that first. In addition, we're going to discuss new statistics when it comes to housing, about the high cost of renting an apartment today in Canada. 2 solutions suggested by a guest we'll hear from include rent control and rapid construction of nonprofit housing. Of course, solutions that we have heard and been discussing. But what is the latest status of rent control in Canada? Stay tuned. And we will continue to remember the design architect of the Canadian Museum for Human Rights who passed away. And you likely started hearing that news yesterday. Right now, let's go to other headlines and developing stories with Heather Wells.
Good morning. Well, the father of a 19-year-old whose body was found along a northern Manitoba highway says his son was compassionate and hardworking. Peter Charlotte was last seen walking away from a home off Highway 283 west of the Paul last Saturday. His body was found the next day. We're going to hear from his dad, Daryl Walker, coming up as well. The Winnipeg Regional Health Authority is asking for your help finding its stolen Street Connections van. The health authority says the vehicle used for its evening outreach program was stolen over the weekend. The van is described as a white 2013 Nissan with a large Street Connections logo on each side. I'll be back with more Manitoba news at 6:30.
All right. Thanks, Heather.
You're welcome.
Let's get into what's happening in our forecast. Yesterday, to say the least, very eventful with everybody digging out of the snow in Brandon. I will get to some things that are still affected because of that snow in Westman, but right now let's look at the day. Abby Adeyemi is back. Good morning.
Good morning, Marcy. I can tell you no warnings across Manitoba today, so that's like a good sign.
It is.
It's clear. I'll give you today's forecast. I'll just call it the triple C. It's clear, it's cold, and it's chilly. That's what it looks like out there. But right now in the downtown, it's minus 17, and we are in for sunny day with a transition to a mix of sun and clouds later in the day. And then the wind is going to be relatively calm because it's kind of windy right now, and it's going to be smashing in your face if you're cycling or running. So you need to take that into consideration as you step out. However, the temperature is brisk. We're heading to a high of minus 9. The wind chill might make it feel like a frigid minus 27 this morning as you start your day, but gradually it's going to improve after your lunch break, so you need to put that into consideration. Also, the sunglasses, I'll tell you, I'm just a sunglasses person, so put that into consideration also as you step out today, because we're going to be getting lots of sunshine. But right now, Winnipeg, we are at minus 17.
All right, thanks, Abby.
You're welcome.
So here's what's affected still because of the snowstorm. Schools are open, but school buses are still not running today in the Park West School Division, and then buses are also canceled today in the Rolling River School Division, but again, school is on. So no buses in Rolling River or Park West. 6:14 a.m. And we were all off yesterday, myself and Abby and Mr. Corey Funk. So welcome back to you too, Corey.
Good to be back. There's the biggest issue right now, is there's still the highways aren't still in perfect condition after the storm yesterday. Particularly, I'm looking at Manitoba 511 right now. The highway is kind of southwest of Winnipeg. I'm talking kind of Highway 3, kind of going through Sanford, like pretty much Oak Bluff, and then south going through Stanford, as well as Highway 334, are being reported as covered right now. And that's kind of all the way to Treeherne, Swan Lake area. So be careful if you're hitting those highways. And still, even in western Manitoba, a lot of the highways, including number 1, are still being reported as partly covered. So you may run into a little snowy, drifty, icy patch here and there. So be careful if you're hitting the highways this morning. Give me an update. I'd love to get more of a in-depth update from folks who are out there on the highways or here on the roads in the city or on bike lane sidewalks. Let me know what you're seeing out there. Sidewalks actually on my run-in this morning were actually pretty decently packed, not too bad and pretty grippy. So if you give me a call, I'll let folks know. 204-788-3093.
6:15 a.m. and it is now one of the most iconic parts of our Winnipeg skyline. I'm talking about the Canadian Museum for Human Rights. And Antoine Predock, the design architect behind the CMHR, has died. He was 87 years old. People started to remember him yesterday and his work. His design for that building was selected in one of Canada's largest architectural competitions, launched in 2003 by friends in the CMHR. His death marks the end of an era, but he does leave a legacy that will continue to influence architects worldwide. On Up to Speed, guest host Chloe Friesen spoke with Louise Waldman, the Director of Public Affairs for the Canadian Museum for Human Rights, about what Antoine Predock's work means to her and the museum.
I've been thinking about it a lot today, and just chatting with colleagues and our volunteers and all the folks who've had a chance to meet him. He just really looked at the way nature connects to landscape. And so, I think about him all the time, at different moments in the building, when I'm outside the building. I think he really looked for ways to tell stories with his design and ways to connect the building back to the earth. And so I'm sad today, and I know a lot of us are sad, but I'm also happy. I got to meet him. He was just such an incredible, engaging human.
Do you have a favorite part of the building personally, as someone who spends a lot of time there?
I actually do. And when I told him, he was here in 2018, and he asked me, he would ask anybody,
oh, I love that.
What's your favorite part of the building? Or he'd say, oh, or he wanted to know if you had complaints about the building too. He just loved to talk. So there's a space that's kind of just offside the level 4 galleries that has some couches, and you can kind of see over both rivers. You can see the forks of the rivers. And when I'm here early in the morning, I love to go there and watch the sunrise. Or if I'm here late at night, I love to go there and watch the sunset. And he didn't like that. It wasn't his favorite part of the building.
Oh,
he told me I was
really?
wrong with my favorite part of the building because it wasn't part of his initial thinking. It was a piece that got added on. But I love it because you're coming out of content that can be really challenging on the 4th floor. And it just gives you this connection back to light in a very real sense. And so it always makes me happy to sit there.
That sounds lovely. I'll have to take a seat and just enjoy that space for a while next time I'm there.
Yeah.
Now, Predock has said that his most important building was the Canadian Museum for Human Rights. Why do you think that is?
I think he just really embraced the challenge of it. And so if you think about the journey through the museum, that journey from darkness to light, even when you're standing at the very start of that, in Bonnie and John Bueller Hall on level 1, which is quite dark, there is a glimmer of natural light, and it just builds and builds and builds as you go through the building. And he saw that as connected to the journey or the struggle for human rights, right? Even in the darkest times, there's always hope. And then by people working together, you can move towards progress and a better future. And he embraced it. He embraced everything about the challenge. He, was a New Mexico. He called it his spiritual home. He lived there for 70 years, but hated the cold, but would often be in Winnipeg in the middle of the winter, bundled up, and sometimes cursing the weather, but he was just so committed to this vision.
Now, so much of the design is so intentional, that darkness to light, just everything that goes into this building. How do you think the design influences how people experience the museum, how they take in the information that they're learning as they're going through the displays?
I think it influences different people very differently. And I think that was his vision too. He, at different times he talked about the different pathways through the museum. I think it's you can come to the museum and have a very different experience depending on your mindset or the content that you engage with. And I think that was his idea. And sometimes you want to maybe spend some time focusing on hope and light. And so he created those spaces. And sometimes you want to learn and maybe reflect on some dark moments. And so, I think the whole design of the building helps you have the experience that you want to have. I heard someone once talk about the museum as those old books I used to read when I was a kid, a choose your own adventure.
Yes.
And I kind of feel like that does fit our museum. And that was part of Antoine's vision.
What impact do you think that his work will have on future designers? He kind of majorly impacted Winnipeg's skyline.
Yeah, and he He's won a number of like prestigious awards. As an architect, he was recognized for his work across the US, but also in other countries around the world. I think he also, architects have a very unique language, and the way they talk about things can often, it's very complex, right? The work that they do. He was also a pretty, he was a person who spoke very plainly sometimes. Like he compared, he loved to ride his motorcycle. That was one of his biggest passions in life. And he talked about his building the museum as like a ride, a motorcycle ride. And I think he really did kind of change the way people think about how buildings should be connected to the natural environment, and tried to find ways to build those connections in, even if it's like a huge project like the museum, or a smaller project that he took on. Like he brought that passion for the natural world connection to everything he did.
How are you going to remember Antoine today?
The last time I had the chance to talk to him was in 2018 when he was here at the museum. He was here on our opening weekend, and many folks didn't know. He was just wandering around. We welcomed thousands and thousands of visitors, and he was wandering around in jeans and a t-shirt, just chatting with everybody.
Oh, I love
what
that.
do you think of the, like, without anybody, necessarily knowing who he was?
He's like a secret shopper.
Yeah, except he really wanted to hear. And so I'm remembering the last time I saw him when he asked me, what's your favorite spot in the museum? And I told him, and he said, no, that's the wrong one. And then took me to like a kind of a back hallway, a staff only hallway that's just poured concrete. And he said, like, this is one of my favorite spots in the building. And then just started walking me through all of these details that I'd never even noticed, and said, you should love this. And he was just a passionate, fun, exciting human.
That was Louise Waldman, the Director of Public Affairs for the Canadian Museum for Human Rights. She was speaking there with CBC's Chloe Friesen on Up to Speed. Chloe's been guest hosting. Remembering the design architect of the iconic CMHR building, Antoine Predock. He died over the weekend and people are remembering him. What I remember is when he was won that design competition, there was a lot of controversy about that design, which is really interesting to me because today, as Chloe mentioned and I mentioned as well, it's so iconic in our skyline, especially in the backdrop of the Esplanade Real there. But there was a lot of controversy about how would this work? How big would it be? Would it just sort of look like it was stuck on the landscape? And now, of course, it's so beautiful and respected. And I remember as they were building it, being there when the last piece of glass went into the top of the building, the very last piece of glass. They invited media to come, and it was sort of carried up there on with a forklift and put into place. And it was so intricate and difficult. When you actually look at the roof line, if you're driving in Winnipeg this morning, have a look and think about how much it would take to actually design that and then to see it through to be built. It really is quite something. And the meaning of the building as well, if you're ever on that ground level floor, if you're at an event, you'll find the colors are warm and you feel like you're in clay and you're in earth, and that's intentional. And then when you walk up the different walkways, the ramps, they're all lit in light with a different bright colored white stone, and that's supposed to be sort of as you become enlightened on your journey through the museum. I remember hearing all of that from the designer and the architect years ago as the building was put together. Antoine Predock died, as mentioned, over the weekend.
Hi, I'm Paul Havershrud, host of The Cost of Living, a national business show that looks at everything the world of money touches, which, admittedly, is a lot of stuff.
The Cost of Living. Go beyond the facts and figures and discover the compelling business stories that affect the day-to-day lives of Canadians right across the country. Economics, business, and you. The Cost of Living with host Paul Havershrud. Available now on CBC Listen.
6:24 a.m. is the time right now, and one of the most loved videos on our YouTube page on CBC Manitoba is Jim Agapito bowling. Last fall, he went bowling for the 75th anniversary of Winnipeg's Coronation Bowling Centre. Well, it has been 50 or 60 years even since the golden age of bowling, if you go back. It is a sport that has had popularity that's slowly been fading over the decades. But now there's a British company that's buying up some of Canada's oldest and crustiest lanes. CBC producer Danielle Nerman this morning explains why it's banking on bowling to make a comeback.
Good morning. How are you?
We're just
You're
having
really good.
Kathy Wrights has been bowling 3 times in the last month, so I'm pretty sure she's gonna cream me.
I guess we'll see how much you actually suck, because I think even someone who's bowled for a long time, it's a level playing field.
That's what Kathy loves about bowling. Anyone can do it. Her friends, her kids, grandma, grandpa, and
bowling is really still affordable. You can do a family of 4 for still under $100. Whereas a few hours at the ski hill, you're probably over $300, $400.
You're picking a heavy object and chucking it down a lane and knocking things over. What's not to like?
Stephen Burns is the CEO of the Hollywood Bowl Group, the largest bowling operator in the UK. 2 years ago, it started buying up old bowling alleys across Canada and fixing them up for a new generation. Not hardcore league players, but people who may have tried it once or twice.
In the UK, 98.6% of people have bowled at some point in their lives. In Canada, from the customer research that we did, it was actually closer to 100%. It's something that everybody has done.
Stephen Burns says after the pandemic, everyone was itching to get out. We're now spending less on stuff and more on fun. But
they don't want to go somewhere where it's a dark, dingy, feet sticking to the carpets and an outdated experience.
They want new arcade games, online booking systems, and better food.
Not just, greasy fries and a terrible cheeseburger. We're talking about, places that have ahi tuna.
Bill Snowberger is with U.S. Bowling. He says the sport is having a moment. His company renovates alleys all over the U.S. and Canada, and business has been good.
We normally have slow seasons, where November, December, January, and February, that's kind of our slow time where we can catch our breath, replenish our inventory, give our installers some time off. Hasn't happened in 2 years. It's year round for us right now.
While many bowling centers are getting a facelift, many have also just disappeared. In the last 20 years, Canada has lost more than 200 bowling alleys. A lot of owners retired and sold the land to developers. But the Hollywood Bowl Group is hoping to slow that trend. Next month, it will open its 12th location in Canada with plans to build and reno at least 20 more over the next decade. And that's A-OK with Kathy Wrights.
I've been to some of the oldest bowling alleys that have never really been cleaned up, and I've been to some of the newer ones, and what an experience having those nice computers. I've learned how to tally on a piece of paper, but if I don't have to do that anymore, that's so great.
What's not so great? My score.
Well, yeah, maybe we need to just strengthen up your arms a little bit. Uh-oh.
For the cost of living, I'm Danielle Gutterball Nerman.
Do you bowl, Manitoba? Where do you bowl and why do you love it? And do you have a lane that you're really hoping and loving will never close? 788-3205, let us know. If you want to hear more cost of living, it's on this morning at 11:30 right here on CBC Radio 1. I'm Marcy Marcusa. You're on 89.3 FM, 990 AM, or on the app or YouTube. Good morning, everyone. I want to mention minus 17 in Winnipeg and clear, but we do have some issues still because of the storm. So one of them is just highways. Just take it easy in Westman this morning on Manitoba 511. Corey was checking this morning. Some are partially covered, with some snow, a little bit slippery, as you can imagine. And so driving conditions are challenging. So here's some things that are affecting school divisions, speaking of which. In Rolling River School Division and in Park West School Division, school is on today, but buses are not running. And in addition, Brandon School Division buses will not operate outside the city of Brandon today as well. Alexander and O'Kelly schools are open. Spring Valley School, though, is still closed, so Spring Valley closed. closed. Buses will run within the city of Brandon, but expect delays. And you know that if you live there, you're still digging out probably in your own street and yard. So check with the school if cancellation affects any field trips. Attendance at school is at parental discretion if you do have travel required. And they're asking that you call the school, though, if you're not going to attend. So just use caution after the storm. Business news right after your CBC Winnipeg news.
This is CBC News. Good morning. I'm Heather Wells in Winnipeg. At 6:30, it is a clear, cold start to Tuesday in Winnipeg. Minus 17 in downtown right now. Mix of sun and clouds this afternoon, and we do warm up to minus 9. The father of a 19-year-old whose body was discovered along a northern Manitoba highway last month says his son was compassionate and hardworking. Peter Charlotte was last seen walking away from a home off Highway 283 west of the Paul last Saturday. His body was found the next day. Daryl Walker says Peter was well liked. Since his death, community members have been sharing memories and stories about him.
Peter stuck out in her mind because she'd never seen a young adult after dinner get up and begin to wash the dishes on behalf of, showing that Peter was like that. He was well-mannered, respectful.
Walker doesn't understand why his son would leave a house without a jacket or shoes in the middle of winter. He's looking for answers from people who last saw him and from RCMP who say their investigation is ongoing. RCMP in the pod do not suspect foul play but are waiting for autopsy results. A trial is underway for a Winnipeg man accused of killing his 3-month-old son in 2020. The judge-only trial started yesterday with testimony from the boy's mother. CBC's Caitlin Garlick has the story and a warning: some details may be distressing.
Evelyn Gillis broke down in tears as she testified about the death of her 3-month-old son. Maven Gillis Moreau was found unconscious in 2020 while he was being watched by his father. Matthew Moreau is charged with manslaughter in his son's death. Court heard the 911 call that Moreau made the day of Maven's death. He was emotional as he told the operator his son wasn't breathing and had vomit coming out of his mouth. Court heard Maven was injured more than once while in Moreau's care, including one incident a day before he died, where Gillis said she got home to find the baby had a puffy upper lip and blood in his mouth. Maven's mother says she remembers him as a really happy baby who always had the biggest smile on his face. It's a smile she says she really misses. Caitlin Gowerluck, CBC News, Winnipeg.
The Winnipeg Regional Health Authority is asking for your help finding its stolen Street Connections van. The Health Authority says the vehicle used for its evening outreach program was stolen over the weekend. That van drives around the city 6 nights a week, providing harm reduction services. The van's described as a white 2013 Nissan with a large Street Connections logo on each side. The WRHA says its evening outreach program will still operate in a rented vehicle with Street Connections signage on the roof. Anyone who spots the stolen van, though, or who has information or has seen it, is asked to call Winnipeg Police. The Federal Conservative Party won a by-election last night in the riding of Durham, east of Toronto. Jamil Javani will be the next Member of Parliament. In his victory speech, he criticized the Prime Minister.
Justin Trudeau doesn't really know what to do with people like me. He doesn't know what to do with a lot of people in this room. He looks at us and he thinks that his party owns us and owns our communities. He looks at me and sees a millennial, son of an African immigrant, grandson of a public school custodian, survivor of cancer thanks to our public health care system, and raised by a single mother. And he thinks that people like me owe his party something.
Giovanni says his victory proves Durham wants Pierre Poilievre to be the next Prime Minister. He takes over the seat left vacant by former Conservative leader Erin O'Toole. It is Super Tuesday in the U.S., a pivotal day in that race for the White House. 16 states and 1 U.S. territory will pick presidential candidates. Lucia Santillan is a voter in North Carolina.
Well, I don't agree with really anything Trump does, but I feel like, especially during the Biden administration these past 4 years, a lot of things haven't gotten done that he said he would.
Donald Trump and Joe Biden are both expected to win their respective party contests today. You can hear the latest national and international news coming up on World Report at 7. And the Prime Minister of Singapore is defending an exclusive deal with Taylor Swift. The pop star is performing 6 concerts in Singapore this week. The government is paying her not to perform anywhere else in Southeast Asia. Lee Shen Long is the leader of Singapore.
Taylor Swift is performing in Singapore. We negotiated an arrangement with her to come to Singapore and perform, and to make Singapore her only stop in Southeast Asia. I mean, if we had not made such an arrangement, would she have come someplace else in Southeast Asia or more places in Southeast Asia? Maybe, maybe not.
Lee says the incentive money for Taylor Swift is part of a recovery fund to rebuild tourism after COVID, but he won't say how much they're paying her. You can find more news updated throughout the day. Just head to cbc.ca/Manitoba.
All right, Heather Wells, thank you.
You're welcome.
Let's get into the forecast here. It's time for your regional forecast for your Tuesday, March 5th at CBC Manitoba with Abby.
Good morning once again. Let's kick off from Winnipeg. It's currently clear and brisk. We are at minus 17 degrees. We should be expecting plenty of sunshine today. Now, that sunshine is going to gradually transform into a mix of sun and cloud later afternoon. And then the wind that you're experiencing currently will be relatively calm. But you should brace yourself for a frosty morning with a wind chill, making it feel like minus 27. Good morning, Brandon. It's currently clear at minus 26 for folks in the Westman region. Today will be mainly sunny and then a transition into a mix of sun and clouds by noon with a high of minus 13. Now, be cautious of the wind chill also, because it's going to be feeling like minus 32 this morning with a risk of frostbite. So you need to take care. Up in Thompson, a light snow currently, and that light snow is going to be ending around noon. You are currently at minus 20 now. When the snow goes away, it's going to be turning cloudy up in the north, and then you see a high of minus 15. Now, with the wind chill, it will feel like minus 28, so a risk of frostbite also. Churchill is icy at minus 23 degrees. Expect a mix of sun and cloud with a light chance of snow this morning, and then currently it's kind of blowing over there with a high of minus 20. Dauphin is clear at minus 21, heading to a high of minus 13. Gimli's clear at minus 23. We'll see sunny skies today, and then around noon it's going to mix the sun and clouds. We'll see a high of minus 10. Steinbach is currently at minus 17, and for Morris is clear at minus 19. The Pembina Valley region will be seeing mainly sunny day and then become a mix of sun and clouds by noon, and we will see a high of minus 6. The wind chill will be minus 22. It looks like across the province this morning, except for Churchill, it's just a dance of a sunny day and then a mix of sun and cloud.
Man, you know, the blue has been so good. Have you guys noticed yesterday with the sunny day? I know we're still cleaning up. It looks like it's a paint chip, the sky. It's such a good blue prairie sky when it's a sunny day.
And I did a thing yesterday. I caught the golden sunset.
Ooh. Well, share that picture. We'll get it. Did you get it really good?
No, I just only enjoyed.
You enjoyed it?
I just wanted to enjoy that golden sunset. I've not done that in a while. No photos, no cameras. I just wanted to look at it and appreciate it.
Oh, I love that. I actually like that you didn't capture it. That means you've really done the right thing for your soul.
I just wanted to put the phones away, the cameras away, and just capture sunsets.
Yeah, I love that. I love that. Let's get into the traffic situation here with Corey Funk.
Yeah, also I have to say with that sun, you can start to feel it now too on your face, which makes it a lot nicer as well. Other than really, it's just the highways this morning that are you just want to keep an eye out for. Still left over from that storm. A lot of the highways, particularly in Westman, are being reported as either covered or partly covered. Highway number 1, for example, pretty much right from Winnipeg to just past Brandon, it's being reported as partly covered, so still passable, but may run into the odd snow patch or drift here and there. So be careful. But looks like the highways are the worst right now in terms of being reported as covered is Oak Bluff, and then it's kind of southwest of that on kind of Highway 3, as well as the highway that runs through Starbuck, Highway 334 through Starbuck. So just be careful there if you're heading kind of southwest of Winnipeg this morning. If you see anything else going on out there, give me a call on the CBC commuter line, and I'll let folks know what you're seeing. 204-788-3093.
Thank you, Corey.
Thank you.
Well, let's stay west for a moment here. Brandon School Division says buses won't operate outside Brandon for today. Alexander and O'Kelly schools are open, but Spring Valley School is closed. Buses will run in the city of Brandon, but expect delays, and check with with your school if the cancellation affects any field trips. Attendance at school is at parental discretion this morning where travel is required, but call the school if you're not going to be attending. In addition, in Rolling River and Park West school divisions, school is on, but buses are also not running. Let's get to business news with Phil Demont, who joins us from our national CBC Business Desk. Hi there, Phil.
Hi, Marcy.
So one industry that's not showing any sign of slowing down is the current environment autos. How is the industry doing right now?
Well, if you go by February sales figures, the technical term is gangbusters, I think. In February, Canadians bought 129,000 new cars and light trucks. All-time record for the month, according to Rosier Automotive. February's figures 14% higher than January, 24% up compared to last year, same time last year. If you spread the February number over the entire year, kind of to annualize it, Canada's car makers on pace to sell more than 2 million vehicles. That would be the highest sales number since January 2018. Analysts over at DeRosier say these sale figures show that all that post-pandemic issues, things like computer chip shortages, you can't get the car over from China kind of stuff, that's behind the industry in this country. Lower prices also help. Now in December, the average price for a new car in Canada, $67,000. That's a lot of money.
Wow.
I know. I mean, I paid $32,000 a decade ago for my Mazda, but that's the way it goes. It's down, though, versus November, and the price of a used car is down. And experts say those prices will start coming down as well in the ensuing months, not falling like a stone, but easing down because the supply of new cars, trucks in Canada, highest level since mid-2021. Trouble spots for the industry, though. Scotiabank points out that higher interest rates likely would place a cap on consumer demand for new rides. For the obvious reason, the average rate on a car loan between 7 and 8%.
Oh, how times have changed. Thank you, by the way, for understanding my question that did not come out right. All right, let's move to another story this morning. More Canadians are having trouble meeting their debt payments. What do our numbers look like?
Yeah, the percentage of people who are behind their credit card and non-mortgage debt payments went up for the last 3 months of 2023. That's when you compare them to a year earlier. Equifax Canada, the people who calculate this stuff, say 1.3% of Canadians haven't made out their outstanding payments, debt payments in the past 90 days. That's how they define delinquency, up from 1% a year earlier. Obvious reason. Total outstanding debt, not counting mortgages, rose 4% in the most recent quarter. Throw in mortgages and Canadians' outstanding borrowing, $2.45 trillion. Problems revolve, not surprisingly, around higher interest rates. Equifax says Canadians who renew their mortgages now face, on average, an increase of $457 a month in their house payments, their mortgage payments. Interestingly, though, the delinquency rate on mortgage is way less than on credit card debt, but it still probably causes you trouble when you're paying off your plastic. That's because the money available for your credit card is now getting soaked up by those higher mortgage payments. Broken down by age, though, it's not younger Canadians who can't make their payments. If you're under 35, the delinquency rate now is less in that quarter than it was the third quarter of 2019, so before the pandemic began. It's Canadians older than 36 years of age who are having trouble paying off their credit cards compared to before the pandemic.
And before we look at markets, why is the Cookie Monster weighing in on the economy?
Because apparently the cookie-eating Sesame Street character is on X. And on Monday, he was posting about shrinkflation, and his blueness isn't happy. Quote, "Me hate shrinkflation. Me cookies are getting smaller." I don't know who measures this stuff, but the size of an Oreo is 6% less than it was in 2019. Reflects the fact that cookie prices are up almost 30% since before the pandemic. So snack makers cutting down on the size of each cookie. Similar to other products, paper towels, toilet paper, are 35% more expensive than 2019. Third of that increase is due to paper makers cutting the size of the roll. That's shrinkflation. It's not the cookie, only the Cookie Monster upset with this. 64% of Canadians find the practice, quote-unquote, unacceptable. As a result, some countries like South Korea and Brazil have introduced new rules where product makers have to post obvious signs saying that they've reduced the size of the product. Fair enough, but in my mind, it's a bit of a debate because I view it as inflation. So if you don't want to pay the same amount for a smaller item, you're going to pay more for the same size item. It's one or the other.
Markets, how are they looking?
Right now, they're a bit negative in Europe, with Germany and the UK down marginally. Hong Kong was down 2.5%. Shanghai, though, up 0.25%. Oil down 71 cents, $78.03 US a barrel. Gold's up $6, but a really high level, $2,132 an ounce. And the Canadian dollar down about a tenth of a cent, trading at 73.56 cents US.
All right, thank you, Phil.
Thanks, Marcy.
With business news, that's Phil Demont. Well, while we're talking about all things that are pricey in your life, let's turn our attention from the cost of automobiles to the cost of renting. The average cost of a 2-bedroom rental in Winnipeg is $1,350. Now, that's according to a recent report from the Canadian Mortgage and Housing Corporation. But that's just one report and one number. In big cities across the country, many people's wages are now not enough to pay for a 1-bedroom apartment. According to an analysis that was put together by the rental site rentals.ca and the market research firm Urbanation, the average asking price of rent across Canada is now up $373, and that's just compared to 4 years ago. Tanya Burkhardt is an advocate with Acorn Canada. That's a national community organization dedicated to helping low and middle income Canadians. And we reached her to talk about it.
Good morning. How are you?
I'm well, but I'm not renting. We sure hear from a lot of people about the impact on their lives that the rise in rent has caused. How would you characterize overall rental prices in Canada right now?
I think the increase in rental prices is alarming, and it's disproportionately impacting low and moderate income renters. The vacancy rate for purpose-built rentals has reached 1.5%, which is extremely low. It indicates that there's very little supply and demand is high. We're losing affordable housing faster than it's being built. And the average rent growth reached a high of 8%. And in 2022, it was 5.6%. So rent is aggressively growing. Rent growth is exceeding inflation at 4.7%, and wages are at 5%. And so at 8%, it's outpacing wages and inflation. And many renters are paying more than 50% of their income on rent, and affordable housing should be defined at 30% of net household income. And so there's a real disconnect between affordable housing and unaffordable housing.
Do you know how long we've been at 50%? If sort of the goal is for people to be at 30% to be sustainable, and you said people are spending more than 50% of income on rent. Have we been there now for a number of years?
I would say we've been there really in the last 5 to 6 years.
That's really taking a toll on families then when you think about that. Nothing's improving. Let's look at some of the prices across the country. I mentioned Winnipeg, and of course we have to consider sort of all of our cost of living in Winnipeg. We often have lower rental rates than some other cities, but our average cost of a 2-bedroom rental in the city, $1,350. What are you seeing in terms of range across Canada?
For 1 bedroom, obviously, Vancouver, their average is $2,683. The city that I live in is $2,188 for that same bedroom. I believe Winnipeg on the rentals.ca report is $1,326. The 2-bedroom is $1,733. And
okay, so you have different figures, actually. I apologize. These were coming from Canada Mortgage and Housing last fall, but
I'm just using the rentals.ca report that lists cities, the top 35 cities that have the highest rent increases across Canada.
Okay, so can you repeat the Winnipeg number that you just mentioned?
The Winnipeg number is 1,326 for a 1-bedroom, and the value for a 2-bedroom is 1,733.
Can you tell us about the new federal subsidy that's available for some renters and what you make of it?
The Canada Housing Benefits was designed as a temporary one-time rental top-up for low-income renters, but it didn't really take into account the size of families or the unaffordable rent that they pay. So it was based on income rather than what you're paying in rent. And so a lot of renters were really missed with that benefit. And the federal government has announced that they're subsidizing market rents for tenants waiting on affordable housing wait lists. And it's designed to take them off of that list and subsidize an unaffordable rent. But it's a temporary limited support. And it doesn't really tackle the systemic issue or offer long-term solutions to the housing crisis.
What does your group, ACORN, want to see by way of protections for renters specifically?
The most important aspect for ACORN is full rent control with vacancy control. And so that's to prevent rent gouging. We need housing to be community owned, and we need to create acquisition funds and ensure the right of first refusal for land trust co-ops and tenants. We need to make our housing community owned. Any federal funding that corporate landlords receive should be tied to building affordable housing. And we need to change the Income Tax Act to basically close the loophole that provides massive tax exemptions for institutional landlords, or they have to commit to converting 20% of their housing in their portfolio to social housing within 3 years. We basically need to decommodify housing, prioritize social housing, and implement a database so that we know who owns our properties and basically disclose who owns the property and what they're doing with it.
More broadly, what would you like to see nationally for, I guess I'll word this like a new generation of renters?
We need housing to be community owned, and I think the largest protection or change that could be made would be full rent control, and this prevents rent gouging and large increases in rent. And so that's the greatest protection that tenants can have.
Anything to add, Tanya, out of your report, or what you'd like to highlight as we're talking about renters this morning?
I just think that affordable housing has come to the point where it's no longer really a crisis. It's more of a state of emergency. And so we need to prioritize affordable housing and to make sure that if housing is built, it's built for people in core housing need.
Thank you for your time this morning on CBC. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
Tanya Burkhardt, an advocate with ACORN Canada, a national organization dedicated to helping low and middle income Canadians. If you have a rental story in Winnipeg specifically, across Manitoba as well, but I'm looking at Winnipeg rental numbers, I'm really curious what your story is and what your rental, what it's been like for you to rent in this city. So give us a call on the listener line, 788-3205. We're going to talk a great deal about housing or the lack thereof tomorrow on the program. It is at 9 minutes to 7 o'clock now after the storm, although there's still some cleanup in Westman going on, of course, that's going to last. That means that we do have some buses affected. So Rolling River and Park West have canceled buses today, but school is on. Brandon School Division buses aren't operating outside the city of Brandon. Alexander and O'Kelly schools are open. Spring Valley schools closed, and buses will run in the city of Brandon, but expect delays. It's minus 17 in Winnipeg this morning, and it is clear. Coming up next on CBC, last month, Canada's Auditor General Karen Hogan released her report looking at the cost of the ArriveCAN app. She characterized the procurement process as having, quote, a glaring disregard, end quote, for fundamental management and contracting practices. Questions remain about how this happened, and the effort to find some answers continues this week. Ryan Tumulty is here to talk about it, parliamentary reporter with the National Post. Good morning.
Good morning.
So remind us what those key findings were of the Auditor General's report.
Yeah, she just basically found that this app had spiraled out of control on a cost basis with really little documentation to explain, how these costs got so far out of line. She estimated that the app cost $60 million, give or take. But she was very clear that that is an estimate because the documentation, the accounting, the contracts, the invoices, all that sort of stuff that should be in place wasn't consistently in place. And so, she said that what she found here was, it wasn't just accounting problems either. It was, as they updated the app, as they launched new versions, there was really little documentation on the testing there. And that becomes particularly relevant when you factor in that at one point the app sent 10,000 people into quarantine who didn't need to be there. So, overall, just a really flawed rollout process she found that led to some big costs.
So what are the remaining key questions that need answers about how this happened?
Well, I think, as I was saying, the Auditor General found such a lack of documentation that it's really hard to determine who was responsible for all this. The federal government has suspended 2 senior public servants who worked on the app. They have been suspended without pay. They were key to the ArriveCAN app being launched. They worked at CBSA at the time. They've since moved on to other departments. But those 2 have testified before committee that, it wasn't their fault, that they feel like they are being scapegoated and that people higher up than them should be held more accountable for this. So there's lots of questions there. And of course, where was the political level at all of this? Where were the ministers who maybe should have been paying more attention to this rollout and how it worked at the time?
What are you specifically watching for this week around this story that you haven't mentioned yet?
Yeah, so the Public Accounts Committee is hearing more witnesses this week. Mostly, I would say, senior bureaucrats, some people from the Auditor General's office. It'll be interesting to see what they have to say. Some people who should have been tracking these numbers, and it seems like maybe weren't. But also, there is testimony that I think a lot of people on the Hill are waiting for, which is from the 2 owners of a company called GC Strategies. Now, that company got about a third of the ArriveCAN spend, about $20 million. And they are basically just a middleman. They link up the government with IT contractors to do the work and take a portion of that. So I think there's a lot of questions about their role in this. Now, they have testified before. They were called back to testify for a House of Commons committee and declined, basically. Now, the House of Commons has summoned them, which gives the Sergeant-at-Arms the power to detain them before their testimony. So that testimony is supposed to happen in the next few weeks. And it'll be interesting to see if that, gets scheduled soon or if there's pushback on that summons, that sort of thing.
We'll leave it there this morning, Ryan. Thank you for your time.
No problem. Thank you.
Ryan Tumulty is a parliamentary reporter with the National Post. Every Tuesday at this time, we check in with what's happening in federal politics. We are keeping an eye on the roadways. Corey was been checking Manitoba 511 this morning, especially highways west, just to see sort of what's going on. So as you can imagine, after all that snow in Westman and around Brandon, you do still have highways that are snow covered. Some of them are park covered. So it could be slippery here or there. Nothing major to mention, like no closures or such. But if you are spotting anything on the highways that we should know about, let us know how your drive's going. 788-3093. So hopefully if the wind stays down, we won't have visibility issues. We are all going to have a nice sunny day here in southern Manitoba. And in northern Manitoba, Thompson will get a little bit of light snow that should end near noon. And then it's going to cloud over for the afternoon. Here in Winnipeg, we're going to kind of have a sunny start, then a mix of sun and cloud for us this afternoon as well. Our high is -9, so kind of a straight ahead March day for us here. It's going to be clear this morning as you're stepping out. It is already, I should say. And -17 is our current condition. 3 minutes to 7 o'clock. Heather Wells is back in with developing headlines.
Good morning. Well, the mother of a 19-year-old who died outside the PAW last month is remembering her son as kind and motivated, a son who had his whole life ahead of him. She now is looking for answers from people she believes last saw him. The Winnipeg Regional Health Authority is asking for your help finding its stolen Street Connections van. The health authority says that vehicle was used every evening for the outreach program. It was stolen on the weekend. It is a white 2013 Nissan. It has large Street Connections logo on each side. If you've seen it, call police. I'll be back with more Manitoba news at 7:30.
All right. Thank you, Heather.
You're welcome.
Well, I know I've repeated this about 4 times this hour, but your bus is not running if you're in Park West or Rolling River or if you're in the rural areas of the Brandon School Division. In addition, we have 2 schools that are still closed. One, is still closed. Spring Valley School is closed. It is right now in Winnipeg 2 minutes to 7 o'clock. And pardon us, just a couple of technical issues. The computer's a little glitchy this morning for us. I mentioned Winnipeg's at -17, and Brandon is clear, -23. And up in Thompson, there's some light snow falling, and the temperature is -20. Coming up in the next hour of Information Radio, we are going to be talking about what is happening down south. World Report will tee this up in the latest in national and international news, but it is Super Tuesday in the U.S. So that's the day when the most states hold their primaries. And it's usually a strong indicator of who's going to run for president for the Republican and Democratic parties. Now, No big surprises, I don't think, on this Super Tuesday, but we'll tee up what's at stake. That's coming up after 7. In addition, in the next hour of the show, we're going to meet the University of Manitoba's very own shot put superstar. She's a defending national champion, and the championships are here at home. So we'll find out more about what it takes to compete. And then, as you just heard in the news, one of the outreach vans last night, one of the outreach vans that goes on the streets over the nights was stolen. We're going to actually hear in the next hour from the Salvation Army about some of the work that they do. Stay tuned.
On the current.
The entire region is descending into this abyss of cruelty and hatred.
The best-selling author Yuval Noah Harari is an historian interested in the big picture. Strong critic of that country's Prime Minister, Benjamin Netanyahu. Yuval Noah Harari, coming up on The Current.
The Current with Matt Galloway. This morning at 8:37, 9:07 in Newfoundland, and on the CBC Listen app.
This is World Report. Good morning. I'm Marcia Young. It was supposed to be a multi-billion-dollar settlement. Ottawa was to compensate survivors of federal Indian day schools. But the federal government has come up short, and now CBC News has learned one survivor is taking the agreement to Canada's highest court. Olivia Stefanovic has the details.
It was very difficult for me to apply for it.
No matter how many times Jessie Waldron tried, she says she couldn't reach anyone from the settlement agreement for help.
I felt frustrated and angry and disappointed.
Waldron ended up receiving the lowest amount of compensation for a day school survivor, $10,000, from a deal struck in 2019 with the federal government. Saskatoon-based lawyer Nicholas Racine says Waldron should have been eligible for $150,000 for harms caused to her at the Waterhen Lake Indian Day School in northern Saskatchewan.
You know, these aren't insurance claims. These are claims dealing with real people who were victims of abuse as children.
Racine resubmitted Waldron's claim. It was rejected. Now Waldron is appealing to the Supreme Court for the matter to be reconsidered.
There should be, I think, a serious examination.
University of Windsor law professor Yasminka Kalajic is watching the case closely.
And the fact that these class members have access to lawyers who are willing to undertake these issues and to go all the way to the highest court is remarkable.
It could take a couple of months before Waldron finds out if the Supreme Court of Canada will hear her case and determine whether Waldron will ever get the justice she says is out of reach. Olivia Stefanovic, CBC News, Ottawa.
Donald Trump's march to the Republican presidential nomination took another step forward last night. He easily defeated Nikki Haley in the North Dakota Republican caucuses. The win comes ahead of today's Super Tuesday, when 15 states go to the polls. This election official in North Carolina is approaching the day with some anxiety.
We ask that all who participate, voters, poll workers, observers, and campaigners, treat each other with dignity and respect. We know the political climate in our country is tense.
Millions of people are expected to vote, but the outcome is not expected to change much in the race for the White House. Freelance reporter Steve Futterman has more.
In more than a dozen states and one territory, voters will be going to the polls. But will it make any difference? 24 hours from now, Joe Biden and Donald Trump are almost certain to be in the same position they are today. Despite that, Nikki Haley was on the stump yesterday, campaigning in Texas, insisting the race isn't over.
We don't anoint kings in America. We have elections.
The Haley campaign isn't necessarily expecting a win in any single state, but it's hoping for a good showing, a significant percentage of the vote, perhaps 30%, maybe more. Trump is hoping for a complete sweep. That would put pressure on Haley to drop out. McKay Coppins with Atlantic Magazine doesn't expect any surprises.
There is a significant faction of the Republican Party that doesn't want Trump. It's just that faction has not been a majority.
Trump has made limited campaign appearances. This weekend, he was in Virginia looking past Haley, focusing more on Biden.
This November, Virginia is going to tell crooked Joe Biden, you're fired.
As for Joe Biden, tonight appears to be just a formality. One state to keep an eye on is Minnesota, the home of Democratic Congressman Dean Phillips, who has been trying, so far unsuccessfully, to challenge Biden. Around a third of the total delegates up for grabs this year will be awarded tonight, the biggest prize right here in California. Steve Futterman for CBC News, Los Angeles.
The United States is putting pressure on Israel to come up with a credible humanitarian plan for the people of Gaza. The White House says civilians need food before any military operations proceed. Humanitarian groups describe the situation in Gaza as intolerable. They blame Israel for restricting aid deliveries into the territory. The CBC's Chris Brown reports.
In Gaza, along with Israeli bombs, starvation is now killing the most vulnerable. In one northern hospital, 15 children have now died. At a clinic for children and expectant mothers in central Deir al-Balah, desperate women arrive looking for food.
Acute malnutrition, really a serious problem, and has a bad result for both mother and fetus.
Dr. Maram Badwan of the NGO Project Hope told a videographer working for CBC News that 21% of the pregnant women she sees are malnourished.
The available food in the market are very few. Most of it canned food, and the prices is really high.
The United States has dropped 38,000 ready meals in recent days, but it's just a fraction of what's needed. Humanitarian groups blame Israel for impeding aid deliveries, but Israel says the problem is with distributing food once it's there. State Department spokesman Matthew Miller says Israel must do more.
We are also actively pursuing options to establish a maritime assistance corridor.
How bringing food in by ship to Gaza, which doesn't have a functioning port, would work is unclear, and it would take time to set up, time that much of Gaza's starving population does not have. Chris Brown, CBC News, London.
Ukraine says it has sunk another Russian warship in the Black Sea. The country's military intelligence agency says the vessel destroyed was a large patrol ship. It can reportedly carry cruise missiles and about 60 crew. Kyiv says its forces are using high-tech sea drones. They're taking aim at targets deep behind the front line. Russian authorities have not confirmed the claim. Japan is expressing concern over China's rapidly expanding military. A spokesperson for the cabinet says Beijing poses, quote, the greatest strategic challenge for the peace and stability of Japan and the international community. China has announced an increase in defense spending this year. During an economic statement today at the National People's Congress, Premier Li Qiang said military spending would increase by more than 7%. That budget has more than doubled under Xi Jinping's tenure as president. It also comes as Beijing hardens its stance on Taiwan and increases its military activities in the South China Sea. Scientists are watching the revolutionary tracking technology of a new satellite. They hope it might help in the fight against climate change. It will detect methane emissions that others miss, and, as Jill English reports, it raises the likelihood that industries can be held accountable for their contributions.
Ignition and liftoff. Falcon 9. Go SpaceX. Go Transporter 10.
As a hotly anticipated satellite blasted off into the sky above California, the hope of scientists flew just as high. Jeff Privett is with the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration.
It's one of the first times I felt like, oh my gosh, we at least are going to have one tool in the toolkit.
The tool is actually data generated by MethaneSat, a joint project between the nonprofit Environmental Defense Fund and Google. Caitlin McKay is one of the group's Canadian scientists.
MethaneSat will be continually collecting data and making that available for free, which will help us better understand how much methane is being emitted, where it's being emitted from, and how it's changing over time.
Jonathan Banks at the Clean Air Task Force has been studying methane for 2 decades. He says the mission is a game changer.
We're wildly underestimating the amount of emissions that are there. And what the satellites like MethaneSat are going to do is give us a better ability to start to capture those discrepancies.
Methane is a potent greenhouse gas, and experts say identifying and curbing methane pollution is one of the most impactful strategies to combat climate change. But it's unclear how many governments and companies will use this data to inform action. The Canadian government told CBC News it is monitoring the MethaneSat mission, but that it needs to evaluate the technology before using it to support regulation. Jill English, CBC News, Toronto.
A story about the rise and fall of the BlackBerry has won a major award.
What do you call it?
It's called a BlackBerry.
Huh. Try typing with your thumbs.
The chaotic comedy about the iconic smartphone won a $50,000 prize for the best Canadian feature from the Toronto Film Critics Association. The awards were handed out last night. Director and star Matt Johnson was there to accept the prize. Swan Song, a profile of Canadian ballerina Karen Kane, won the $50,000 prize for Best Canadian Documentary. And that is the latest national and international news from World Report. News anytime, cbcnews.ca. I'm Marcia Young.
Well, good morning, Manitoba, and hello, Winnipeg. I'm Marcy Marcusa with our team here at Information Radio. Brad and Corey and Abby behind the glass. This is the morning show on CBC 89.3. Or on YouTube or on the CBC Listen app. It is mainly clear in Winnipeg, minus 17, and we do still have some school division buses affected by the storm in Westman, so I'll announce that in a couple of minutes here. This hour on the program, it is Super Tuesday, as you just heard on World Report. We'll get a bit more analysis of the politics down south coming up. At 7:40 this morning, locally, what does it take to become a national university shot put champion? We're going to introduce you to Manitoba's throwing superstar and what could be her last national championship ever held here at home. And then we are going to take it to the street. Tomorrow, we're planning a special broadcast live at the Salvation Army on Henry Street, which also front faces Main Street at the center of hope. I'll have a bit of a preview. We'll hear from one of the intake workers, and then we're also going to hear a little bit about a van that goes out on the street and takes care of people. There's another one actually making news this morning for very different reasons. Heather Wells is in with headlines. I'm not sure if you have that story in your headlines, Heather. I should have checked with you.
Absolutely, yeah. It's the Winnipeg Regional Health Authority is letting people know that its Street Connections van has been stolen. That happened this past weekend, and that van has been used for evening outreach programs. It drives around the city 6 evenings every week, providing harm reduction services. So Winnipeg Regional Health Authority wants you to keep your eyes peeled for a Street Connections white 2013 Nissan. If you see it, call police. We're also going to hear about a trial that started this week of a Winnipeg man accused of killing his baby boy. Matthew Morrow charged with manslaughter and aggravated assault in the death of the 3-month-old child. I'll be back with more Manitoba news at 7:30.
Thank you, Heather.
You're welcome.
Let's get into the forecast here. Abby, what do we know?
Yeah, it's currently minus 17 in the city, and we have crystal clear skies in Winnipeg. If you're stepping out of the house, just make sure you bundle up because it's a bit cold out there. Though we're in for sunny day with a transition to a mix of sun and clouds later in the afternoon. And then the wind, which is kind of brisk right now, will definitely be calm later. The temperature actually is making it feel we're gonna head to a high of minus 9 today, but because of a frosty morning we're having, the wind chill might make it feel like minus 27. So you need to take care as you set out today. That wind chill will definitely improve around noon, and then tonight we're going to see partly cloudy skies and a continuation of the cold weather. But right now, Winnipeg, we're waking up to minus 17.
All right, thanks, Abby.
You're welcome.
And it's time to get into the traffic situation. Let me start with what's happening with school buses. So Park West School Division, Rolling River School Division, school's on, but there are no buses running in either of those divisions. Brandon School Division, no buses in the rural areas today. To be clear here, though, Spring Valley School is closed, but all other schools are open, and that does include Alexander and O'Kelly schools. Buses will not be running inside, buses will run inside Brandon, but expect delays. So note that and check with the school if that cancellation is going to affect field trips. Attend at parental discretion if you are traveling, but call the school as well if you're not going to attend. And just an extra note from the division this morning that says, please exercise due caution. And everybody in that part of Manitoba knows why after all that snow that fell. We really escaped the brunt of it here in Winnipeg, boy. Corey, what do we know about this morning's commute?
Yeah, really, it's the highways that still aren't totally 100% after the storm this weekend. Highway number 1, for example, from Winnipeg, pretty much right to just west of Brandon, being reported as partly covered. So that means, it's still drivable, but there might be the odd snow patch or ice. So just be very careful there. Looks like a lot of the highways around Carman actually right now are being reported as covered. So Carman, Treeherne, everything kind of southwest of Oak Bluff. You're going to maybe run into some worse conditions there. Curious to see if folks are on the highway there, what they're seeing. But other than that, things to be running fairly smoothly. Here in the city, got a call from Dan on the bike who says the rapid transit are perfectly plowed right now. Lovely riding down there on his bike this morning. Side street's a bit slippery, though, if you are on your bike, so just careful there. If you see anything else, though, going on, give me a call on the CBC commuter line. I'll let folks know what you're seeing out there. 204-788-3093.
And Heather Wells just walked in and added to our list here of what is happening in the school divisions and with buses. So now Prairie Spirit School Division has reached out to us to say that Manitou area schools are also closed today, and no buses in the St. Claude area, and no buses as well. All closed. St. Claude area schools are closed today, no buses. Treeherne and Holland area schools are closed today, no buses. And Swan Lake and Somerset area schools are closed as well and no buses. And pardon me, I think I said Treeherne instead of Treeherne. But all of those areas are affected. So obviously, as Corey was saying, to the west, still digging out. Well, we don't watch politics down south every single day, but there are certain days, specifically this Tuesday, where we do lean in. It's one of the most important days on the election year in the calendar in the United States. It's Super Tuesday, when the greatest number of states hold their primary elections and caucuses. So results are often a good indication of who's actually going to be in the race for president. Joining me to talk about what's at stake today and in 2024, Paul Waldman. I spoke with him actually in the last hour. He's a columnist for MSNBC.
Good morning.
So before we actually ask about Super Tuesday, I actually want to ask you about yesterday's Supreme Court decision because it pertained to Donald Trump and his campaign to become the Republican nominee. What, for the benefit of the listeners, can you explain what the ruling was about?
Yeah, this goes back to the Civil War. After it was over, they passed a constitutional amendment saying that if you engaged in insurrection against the United States, you are no longer eligible to serve in any federal office. And some people filed lawsuits in a couple of states saying that that applied to Donald Trump because of January 6th. And the Colorado Supreme Court ruled that that was correct, that he had engaged in insurrection and therefore was ineligible to be on the ballot. So the Supreme Court took up this question, and they kind of punted on the question of whether Trump had actually engaged in an insurrection. Instead, they just said that this is a question that has to be addressed by Congress and not by individual states. And therefore, what the Colorado Supreme Court did was invalid, and Trump can stay on the ballot. So it was kind of the outcome that everybody expected. They it was clear that they wanted to find the least disruptive path to the election. But it was certainly a great relief to Trump that he won't be kicked off any ballot.
So Super Tuesday today. What gets decided on Super Tuesday, and how is this year different from past years?
Well, this is the biggest day of the primary calendar. There are 16 states that are all deciding their delegates today, and the primaries decide delegates, and then they go to the conventions in the late summer, and those delegates actually cast the votes that determine who the nominees are. And the reason we have this is that some years ago, a bunch of states decided that Iowa and New Hampshire shouldn't have all the fun. And so if they all banded together and created one big important primary day, then the candidates would come to their states and they'd spend time there and spend money and meet all the activists. And it would be good for those states. And so they created Super Tuesday. And now about a third of all the delegates are chosen on this one day. And so it can serve as kind of the functional end of the campaign sometimes if one leading candidate can knock out his or her opponents, then that can really be the one that decides it, even though there are a bunch of states that still haven't yet voted.
So I was asking about this year and alluding to the fact that it's a little bit unusual. Besides Donald Trump and his what's been happening with him in court, it's also because his main rival Nikki Haley is still in the race, even though she's only won one primary. So why do you think she's still in the race? What is in Super Tuesday for her?
Well, having worked on a couple of presidential campaigns, I can tell you that usually they fold up their tents, not when it appears they're not going to win, but when they run out of money. And, you can't pay the staff or pay for travel anymore. And Haley is still raising pretty substantial amounts of money. There are people who want to donate to her. And so she can keep going if she wants to. And I think that she probably sees this as a prelude to 2028. Lots of people run 2 times even more. Joe Biden finally got the nomination on his 3rd try. And so she is only 52 years old, and she may be saying, well, if I keep going and people seem to like me and I equip myself well, then I can be the natural front runner 4 years from now when we do this all over again. And so my guess is that's her plan. She'll just stay in for a while longer and get people to know her even a little more, and then she can slide right into the next campaign.
What does today mean for Trump and Biden, given that it's almost a sure thing, as we've been outlining, that they're going to win their respective nominations, Biden as well?
Yeah, I think they'll probably now feel as though the fall campaign has begun. We haven't really seen much campaigning, especially from Biden. Trump has been doing some rallies, but Biden has not really been on the campaign trail. Obviously, he has a job that takes up a lot of time. But this may be really the kickoff for the fall campaign, and we'll see them out on the hustings more and airing more ads, even though we are still about 8 months away from the election. It could be a very long election that starts now.
Biden's giving his State of the Union Thursday night. What do you think he needs to accomplish with that?
Well, there's a couple of things. The media here in the States have been positively obsessed with the question of whether Biden is too old. So I think he wants to show the public that he's vigorous and engaged. And more so, he, I think, wants to take the opportunity to make the case for what he has accomplished over the last 3 years. Most people in America don't really have any sense of what he's done, and his record is pretty strong. And this is a unique opportunity. He can get tens of millions of people to watch him talk for an hour. Normally you see the president in sound bites on the news, and this is an extended chance for him to lay out the case for what he's done and what he wants to do for the next 4 years. And there won't be another chance like this during the campaign. We're not even sure that there are going to be debates between him and Trump. There may not be. And this is something where he gets to talk all by himself for an hour. So it really is a special opportunity, and I'm sure he's going to try to make the most of it.
Oh, Paul, we'll leave it there. Thank you for your time.
My pleasure. Thanks.
Paul Waldman, a columnist for MSNBC. I spoke with him last hour. He's also co-author of White Rural Rage, The Threat to American Democracy. We reached him this morning in Washington.
Frequencies with Errol Nazareth.
The world is alive with sound, whether across the street or across the pond, from back home or in your own backyard. Every place has a sound and every person has a story. Discover songs and stories from people and communities across Canada and around the world.
Frequencies with host Errol Nazareth. Episodes available on demand on the CBC Listen app.
Minus 17, mainly clear on this Tuesday, March 5th. And big thanks to everyone who filled in for us yesterday. Faith Fundal was here filling in for me, as well as Nolan Kaler and May McKillop yesterday. So thanks, you guys, for filling in for all of us. We're all back at it today. It's going to be sunny in Winnipeg today, and we have a high today of minus 9 in the city. Right now in Brandon, it's mainly clear. It's minus 24, so very cold. And up in Thompson, there's some light snow, and it's minus 21 degrees. Still ahead, we have morning sports this half hour, but first a bit of music from Winnipeg indie band Neighbor Annie. This tune's called Last Call.
Baby, my heart belongs to you. sleep. Baby, in the morning when I wake up next to you, I see a better side of me. Lately, you are mountains away. Oh, the stars will lead me back to you someday. Will you find me when it's last call? Tell me that you're on your way. When you feel low, find your way back home to me. Remember to take it slow, keep the boots tied to your feet. And I just can't wait to see your face again. But until then, one more drink for the road, one more for me. One day you up and ran away, chasing down the life you've always dreamed. So I settled up my tab and I called myself a cab. Nowhere to go but a place I know with you. Will you find me when it's last call? Tell me that you're on your way.
From their debut album, Wild One, that was Winnipeg band Neighbor Andy with Last Call. To be young. Do you remember Scott Regehr, Last
No.
Call? You don't even remember. You're not that old.
Anything
Come on.
about being young? Oh, man. Anything that I was holding on to with the three boys running my life right now, yeah, no, it's a blur. It's a blur. But I like the music.
Agreed. Let's turn our attention to sports. Let's turn to curling, where the Canadian Men's Championship continues to surprise.
Yeah, so much so that online right now, Marcy, it's being dubbed the Bizarro Briar. Case in point, Team Northwest Territories upset yesterday of the two-time defending champions led by Brad Gushu. Yellowknife skip Jamie Cooey now leads Pool B, and his third, Glenn Kennedy, could not be happier.
Oh, it's unreal. I mean, crowds have been great. Guys are playing really hard. I'm from Edmonton, so I tell people back in Alberta all the time, like, this is 4 great players we have on this team. It's just a matter of coming together in this big event, and I think we're just doing that. We're on cloud 9.
And the Northwest Territories is not the only rink, Marcy, riding sky high. The iconic moose call of Northern Ontario.
Oh, I didn't know what that was. I was like, did you have the wrong clip?
No. That was by design, believe it or not. So moose collars are used to fet whoever's skipping Northern Ontario's rink. And in the past, it's largely been Brad Jacobs out of Sault Ste. Marie. But in his stead, because Jacobs is now representing Manitoba, is Trevor Bonneau out of Thunder Bay. And boy, in his first Briar, is he ever acquitting himself well with a record of 3-1 and near the top of Pool A. Then you have Prince Edward Island, 3-1 near the top of Pool B. This is a Bizarro Briar, and one where not many Manitoba skips were playing yesterday. Matt Dunstone had just the one game, and that was a throttling 15-2 over Yukon. Matt will be playing New Brunswick and Brendan Botcher's Alberta rink later today, while Reed Carruthers, who didn't play yesterday, he's the only undefeated rink left at the Briar. Carruthers takes on BC and New Brunswick today.
Let's turn to hockey here. What are you watching as the Jets are going to host Seattle tonight?
Well, to see if they can avoid having to come back in a game for a change, because that's been their set of circumstances in the last 2 contests that they've played, needing multi-goal third periods against Carolina and against Buffalo. It'll be interesting to see if Gabe Vilardi will get back in the lineup. The forward's been dealing with an upper body injury. He's missed the last 2 games. Should the injury prove to be a longer-term situation, it could affect the Jets' plans ahead of Friday's trade deadline. I know Elliot Friedman of Hockey Night in Canada. Threw out Anthony Mantha of the Washington Capitals as a possible target for the Jets should Vilardi need replacing in the lineup. So we'll have to wait and see. Puck drop tonight is at 7 o'clock.
And although it's not yet a slam dunk, Toronto's reportedly in hot pursuit of a WNBA team.
Yeah, CBC Sports has learned, Marcy, that billionaire Larry Tannenbaum is pushing hard to bring a franchise to that stadium. We could have an announcement in that regard as soon as May. Tannenbaum is a minority owner and chairman of Maple Leaf Sports and Entertainment, which owns the Raptors, Leafs, and others. But a WNBA team would be owned separately through his holding company, the Kilmer Group. Back in October, the league announced its latest franchise would be placed in Portland, Oregon. And at the same time, Marcy, reports surfaced that Toronto was backing down on its bid because Rogers chairman and MLSE co-owner Edward Rogers opposed it. It was disappointing news for Canadian basketball fans for sure, especially since it came so shortly after a successful WNBA exhibition game was held in Toronto, prompting League Commissioner Kathy Engelbert to say this about possible expansion cities.
We're at about 10 now that we're talking with and we're doing due diligence on and we're doing a lot of analysis on. So we're getting closer. Obviously, I've told you Toronto scored very high on the list.
So Engelbert says she wants a 14th franchise in the WNBA playing by next season. Could it be in Toronto? We have an article up on our website about it.
All right. Thanks a lot, Scott.
You bet.
Scott Regier with Morning Sports. And actually, after the news, we have one more sports story to share with you. What does it take to become a National University shot put champion? We're going to introduce you to Manitoba's throwing superstar and what could be her last national championship to be held here at home. That's after your CBC News.
This is CBC News. Good morning. I'm Heather Wells in Winnipeg at 7:30. It is clear and it is cold. Minus 20 right now out at the airport in Winnipeg. It's minus 17 in downtown Winnipeg. Becoming a mix of sun and clouds this afternoon and warming up to minus 9. The mother of a 19-year-old who died outside the Paw last month is remembering her son as a kind and motivated young man who had his whole life ahead of him. She's now looking for answers from the people she believes last saw him. CBC's Rosanna Hempel reports.
Val Charlotte is piecing together her son's final hours, and she's desperate for answers. Mounties say Peter Charlotte's body was found along Highway 283 west of the Paw last Sunday. Police say he was last seen walking away from a home the afternoon before. Charlotte doesn't know the family Peter was with and is suspicious about the circumstances leading up to her son's death. She says he wasn't wearing a jacket or shoes.
I feel like I'm not even here, like I'm somewhere else. It's not real.
RCMP say they don't suspect foul play, but are awaiting autopsy results. For Charlotte, she's angry and frustrated and says officers aren't doing enough. Mounties say their investigation is ongoing. Rosanna Hempel, CBC News, Winnipeg.
A trial is underway for a Winnipeg man accused of killing his 3-month-old baby boy in 2020. The judge-only trial began yesterday with testimony from the boy's mother. CBC's Caitlin Garlick has the story and a warning: some details may be distressing.
Evelyn Gillis broke down in tears as she testified about the death of her 3-month-old son. Maven Gillis Moreau was found unconscious in 2020 while he was being watched by his father. Matthew Moreau is charged with manslaughter in his son's death. Court heard the 911 call that Moreau made the day of Maven's death. He was emotional as he told the operator his son wasn't breathing and had vomit coming out of his mouth. Court heard Maven was injured more than once while in Moreau's care, including one incident a day before he died, where Gillis said she got home to find the baby had a puffy upper lip and blood in his mouth. Maven's mother says she remembers him as a really happy baby who always had the biggest smile on his face. It's a smile she says she really misses. Caitlin Gowerluck, CBC News, Winnipeg.
The Winnipeg Regional Health Authority wants your help finding its stolen Street Connections van. The health authority says that vehicle used for its evening outreach program was stolen over the weekend. The van drives around the city 6 evenings a week, providing harm reduction services. The van's a white 2013 Nissan with a large Street Connections logo on each side. The WRHA says its evening outreach program will continue operating in a rented vehicle with Street Connections signage on the roof. Anyone who spots the stolen van or who has information about where it might be is asked to contact Winnipeg Police. Ukraine says it has sunk another Russian warship in the Black Sea. The country's military intelligence agency says the vessel destroyed was a large patrol ship. It can reportedly carry cruise missiles and about 60 crew members. Kyiv says its forces are using high-tech sea drones. They're taking aim at targets deep behind the front line. Russian authorities have not confirmed the claim. More financially stressed homeowners in Ontario and BC are starting to miss mortgage and credit card payments. Equifax Canada says the alarming trend is primarily being driven by homeowners who are 36 and younger. Mortgage delinquency rates across the country rose 52.3% in the fourth quarter compared with a year earlier. And while delinquency rates for non-mortgage debts that are more than 90 days overdue rose by 28.9%. Miami Beach is trying to break up with spring break, but it's not yet clear whether spring break will take the hint. After 3 straight years of spring break violence, Miami Beach officials are implementing month-long security measures aimed at curbing the chaos. The city's warning visitors to expect curfews, bag searches, early beach closures, DUI checkpoints, and arrests for drug possession and violence. But business owners in Miami Beach's world-famous South Beach area are concerned they're going to lose money during one of the busiest times of the year. And civil rights advocates say the restrictions are an overreaction to largely diverse crowds. You can hear more national and international news coming up on World Report at 8. And as always, find more Manitoba news at cbc.ca/Manitoba.
Thank you, Heather.
You're welcome.
Time for the regional forecast now with Abby Adiemi.
Good morning once again. It's clear in the city. Temperature of minus 17 degrees. We should be expecting plenty of sunshine today, gradually transforming into a mix of sun and cloud around the afternoon period. Now, the winds are relatively calm, but you need to brace yourself for that frosty morning that we've been experiencing because the wind chill actually feels like minus 27. Brandon is currently at minus 26 degrees. Today, we'll be seeing lots of sunshine there, also transitioning into a mix of sun and cloud by noon with a high of minus 13. You need to be cautious of the wind chill. It feels like minus 32 this morning with a risk of frostbite, so you might want to take care for folks in Brandon. Good morning to our friends in Thompson. Light snow you're seeing right now, and that snow is going to be ending and around noon. Then it's going to be cloudy. We will see a high of minus 15. And also with the wind you're seeing, it's going to feel like minus 28, so watch out for a risk of frostbite also. Good morning, Churchill. Icy at minus 23. Today, expect a mix of sun and clouds with a chance of light snow later this morning. Then that light snow is going to be blowing also. We will come to a high of minus 20. Also, we have a wind chill factor in there for you, which will feel like minus 34. Risk of frostbite is also present. Darwin is currently clear at minus 22 degrees. Today will be mainly sunny, becoming light this afternoon with a high of minus 13. A chilly wind chill will make it feel like minus 33 this morning, and then tonight it's going to be more of like some light snow will roll in. Dauphin is currently clear at minus 17 degrees. Today will also be sunny, transitioning into a mix of sun and cloud later, close to the noon period. We will be seeing a high of minus 6, and the wind chill will make it feel like minus 23 this morning. And lastly, Morris is currently at minus 14. The Pembina Valley region will be seeing mostly sunny day, and then becoming mix of sun and clouds near noon, and we'll also see a high of minus 6. It looks like it's a wind chill all across the province this morning, so don't let the sunshine fool you.
I think I've actually worn more winter clothing in the last week than I did for most of the rest of the winter myself, right?
True.
Yeah, got the warm toque out. Now let's get into what's happening in traffic. Corey, have you heard anything from the highways?
You know what? Nothing on the highways that I've heard of, but I have been keeping an eye on Manitoba 511, and it's not a surprise necessarily that there's a number of school closures, particularly in the Treeherne area right now. Those highways are being reported as covered. So I'm talking about the Highway 334 kind of Oak Bluff through Starbuck all the way to Treeherne, as well as Highway number 3 from Oak Bluff down through Sanford to Sperling Carmen area, all the way to Swan Lake. So just be really careful if you are hitting that highway because the highways are what causing some of those school kind of bus closures in that area, which we'll have an update on right away. Other than that, Highway number 1 running west from Winnipeg to Brandon being reported as partly covered right now, so passable, but also might run into some snowy, slippery patches here. So just be careful if you're hitting those highways. Here in the city, hearing about clear bike lanes, actually, particularly on Rapid Transit from Dan on a bike. But other than that, seems like things pretty smooth. Haven't heard much on the commuter line. But if you see something going on, give me a call on the CBC commuter line. That number 204-788-3093.
Thanks, Corey.
Thank you.
So let's start with what's closed. Prairie Spirit School Division says that Manitou area schools are closed today. St. Claude area schools closed today. Treeherne, as Corey mentioned, Treeherne and Holland area schools closed today. And Swan Lake and Somerset area schools are closed today. In addition, in the Brandon School Division, Spring Valley School is closed. Brandon's not operating buses, that division outside the city for today. Alexander and O'Kelly schools, though, are open, and buses are going to run inside the city of Brandon. But you should expect delays if you're already into your morning now. Just note that. Check with the school. The cancellation might affect some field trips, and attendance, of course, is at parental discretion if you have to travel. But they ask you to call the school if you're not going to attend. Two final ones to note here. Rolling River School Division and Park West School Division. School is on, but buses will not run today either. Well, up next on the show, what does it take to become a national gold medal shot put champion? Well, apparently this. What we're listening to is the sound of 3-time shot put gold medalist Anna McConnell practicing her throws in a shot put throwing cage at the University of Manitoba. Woo! Right when the shot put landed, I was talking about the school there. She is a Bison athlete, and she's the defending U Sports National Track and Field Champion. Those championships are coming to the University of Manitoba on Thursday this week. CBC's Jim Agapito had a chance to speak with Anna about the sport and about defending her title at home.
Hi, my name is Anna McConnell. I am a student here at the University of Manitoba, and I throw shot put for the track and field team. Shot put is a throwing event. You have a heavy ball, basically. For girls, it's about 8 pounds, and for boys, it's about 16 pounds. And the goal is basically just to throw it as far as you can. And to score points, with track and field, you have to finish in the top 8. So if you finish first, you're going to get 10 points. Second, 8 points. I think it goes 10, 8, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. So if you throw the furthest distance in the competition, you win. I started throwing in grade 10 in high school. So that would have been about 8 years ago, I think. Honestly, I didn't start off loving it. It was just something I kind of did. And it just kind of grew on me. The better I got, the more I loved it. It's an individual sport. Kind of whatever you put into it is what you're going to get. And I think that's what I really loved about it. Growing up, I played a lot of team sports, which I loved, but I never really did a ton of individual sports. So when I kind of got introduced to shot put, I just loved that it was kind of based off of what I did, how much hard work I put in.
How do you train for it? Like, how did all that happen?
Honestly, I never thought I was going to do university track. I did throw a little bit of shot put and discus in high school, and then one of the throwing coaches for the university kind of approached me and was like, hey, would you be interested maybe in trying shot put at the university, like continuing? And I was like, sure, why not? So I was kind of a walk-on, and honestly, I was not very good at it when I started. I just stuck with it, kept going, trained hard, and I got better at it, and yeah.
Getting ready for your throw, describe that entire process for me.
Have you seen discus before? So it's the same rotation as that, except instead of your arms out here, your arms are here holding the shot put. I wipe my shoes down as soon as I get into the circle. I want clean base. I'm gonna walk to the back of the circle, take a deep breath. I'm gonna kind of get ready, bend my knees a little bit. I'm gonna swing over. I'm left-handed. So I swing kind of over to my left. I'm thinking about pushing my left leg up high, wide, as I'm like pushing some of my weight over onto my right leg. And then I'm swinging the left leg to the middle as I'm driving with my right leg as well. I want my body to turn a little bit in the air and then my left foot is going to hit in the middle, and then following that, my right leg is going to be going back super fast, keeping it close to my body, hitting my block position, still thinking about keeping my shoulders and upper body back and rotated. From there, then I'm thinking about turning and pushing my left hip up and forward at the same time. And then once I've done that, then I can throw with my upper body and kind of push with my arm to fully finish, and then recover. So I do like a little spin and then land.
You've reached some high goals as a shot putter here in Canada. Can you tell me about that?
I have won youth sports the last 2 years, and I won Can West, our like division conference, this year and then the last 2 years.
Now the competition coming up, it's for national championship, correct?
Yes.
Can you tell me about this?
Yeah, so it's the youth sports championships. There's 4 conferences in youth sports. There's Can West, which is what we're part of, OUAs, which is like the Ontario League, RESQ, which is like the Quebec League, and then AUS, which is like the Atlantic provinces. So they each have their own divisional conferences, and if you finish, I think, in the top 2 of your event, then you qualify for nationals, or if you are ranked top 12 nationally, that's another way to punch your ticket. And then the third way is if you hit what's called a youth sports auto qualifier. So for shot put, the distance I think is 13.33 meters. So if you throw over that, then you automatically get to come to nationals.
What were you throwing this year?
My season's best is 14.96.
Mental focus is probably a big part of the game, correct?
Yes, definitely.
How much do you practice that then, before actual competition?
It's definitely increased over the years. About 3 or 4 days leading up to the competition, every day I try to spend 5, 10, 15 minutes kind of just throughout the day, just like mentally picturing what the competition is going to look like and then what my throw is going to look like. It's definitely a longer competition, so it's not just like a race. It's not over in like 6 seconds, like the 60 meter. It's fun, I think, especially once you get to know the background of some of the competitors and like what they've been throwing throughout the year, and just kind of knowing, like, is this going to be a close one? Like, is it going to be...
Are you all friendly? I mean, it's a competition, so I'm like...
Throwers are probably some of the nicest people you'll ever meet. Talking to, like, other people on the track team, they're all like, the throwers are so nice. They're always, like, the nicest people to talk to and everything. And I would say it's the same. Like, in competition, everyone's, like, super nice to each other. Obviously, people are kind of in their own space and in their own head, but, like, everyone's nice to each other. Everyone's talking, usually. I've made a lot of friends from other schools throughout my time, so...
What would a win mean for you, to win in front of your friends, your family, and at the school?
It would mean a lot. To be able to win a 3rd national championship at home in my last year would just be unbelievable. Like, I have no words for it, honestly. I think it would be the perfect way to end off my throwing career at the university. Yeah, it would be amazing.
That was the University of Manitoba shot put athlete and 3-time U Sports gold medalist Anna McConnell speaking to CBC's Jim Agapito. The U Sport National Track and Field Championship starts this week on Thursday. It runs through March 9th. And tomorrow we're actually going to feature another Bison athlete, but this time in sprinting. The event, by the way, is going to stream live on CBC Sports and on CBC Gem.
There are stories you just can't stop thinking about. They take you somewhere, they introduce you to someone, they share something new with you. Liftoff. Those are the stories you want to share with your friends, and CBC's award-winning documentary team is bringing them to you every week on Storylines. Storylines, new this season on CBC Radio 1, and always on demand on the CBC Listen app.
Time right now is 7:47 a.m. on 89.3 FM, 990 a.m. or on the app and or on YouTube. You might be watching this morning. Thanks for tuning in, everyone. It is mainly clear in Winnipeg. It's minus 17. We don't have any watches or warnings this morning. We do know, though, that in Westman, of course, and in Brandon, you're still digging out. It's minus 24 in Brandon, so the snow is going to be crusted over, and it's mainly clear. Really beautiful blue sky for this Tuesday, March 5th. Here in Winnipeg, we're expecting a high of minus 9, and we will have that sunshine with us for most of the morning. Brandon will be sunny as well. Your high's minus 13, and up in Thompson, you have periods of light snow that should end around noon, then mostly a cloudy day, and a high of minus 15 up in Thompson. Highways in Westman could be partly covered with snow, could be slick. Call us if you need, 788-3093. Well, coming up after 8 o'clock live and in studio, as you've been hearing in the news, Measles is back. It is spreading in Canada. It is dangerous. It is highly contagious. And with spring break around the corner, what can you do to keep your kids safe? So in studio live with us will be Dr. Joss Reimer, President-elect of the Canadian Medical Association. So that is coming up for you here on the program after 8 o'clock. But up next, there is a 3-block stretch in Winnipeg where many people land when they're looking for help. Help with housing, help with food, help with addictions, help with hope. Maybe you found yourself there. Maybe you've walked there. Maybe you've driven through, seen people sitting under blankets spilling onto the sidewalks in Winnipeg. A sign of the need for the many resource spaces that are in this area. I'm talking about the 3 blocks of Main Street between Higgins and Alexander. That is where we will be broadcasting from tomorrow, live with the morning show. Specifically, we're going to be at the Salvation Army Center of Hope, which is not only an emergency shelter, though that's one of the misconceptions. It also runs transitional housing, addictions treatment, a residential mental health program. It serves families, women, and as we heard in the news last week, a growing number of refugees. Next on the show this morning, a conversation I had with Stephen Hunter, who works as an intake worker assisting frontline staff and caseworkers at the Salvation Army.
People are here for many different reasons. You know, there's a lot of people who end up here because of addictions, family or intimate partner violence, you know, just not making enough money. Cost of living is a lot higher than what most people can manage nowadays.
Sort of all around you, you see people who are just looking for that one thing that can kind of help. But how hard is that, given that right now we have so many challenges out there? So what's that like here day to day, seeing people coming in?
A good portion of our clients are on EIA. It's not really enough for anybody to live, not even comfortably, you know, just making it, you know, and it's not even enough to do that. So, and trying to find like subsequent housing with such a small amount of money, a lot of these people, if they do end up finding housing, it's like subpar, you know, run down or bug infested or, you know, not nice housing that the average person staying here could afford.
Your life led you to do this work, is that right?
Yeah, well, I used to stay here. I stayed at the Salvation Army 2004, 2005. I stayed here a few times. I was in and out of prison.
So you know what it's like to be out there looking for housing, for example, and for work.
It's difficult, you know. It's very difficult to get the resources and to have the courage to ask for help to get those resources. You know, a lot of people just don't have it in them to even ask for the help, even if they know they need it.
What would you say to those people?
You're not alone, you know. There is always a way, you know, to make it out.
It's interesting because when we were talking here and when I was meeting some of the people that live here, everyone was looking out the window talking about this part of Winnipeg because there's a number of different spaces around. Is that right?
Yeah, there are, like we're here at the Salvation Army, but just down the street is 190 Disraeli, which is Nadinaway Mac, and then down the other way is Main Street Project and Silo Mission. So, you know, but they're experiencing the same thing that we are. You know, we're all very full. That coupled with the influx of refugees, it's been difficult to find space for everyone, you know, but somehow we managed to do it and, you know, try to get everybody out of the cold and at least a roof over their head so that they can stay warm and have a meal and yeah.
There's so much going on in just these couple of blocks of Winnipeg that are representative of so many of those bigger, deeper issues that need to be solved. Where would you start?
Probably like safe consumption sites, I think would be a good start. A place for people to go to use their drugs because they're going to use them no matter what, you know, but having a safe place for people to do so that isn't so much just out in the general public, but also having staff with resources on hand for those people who are ready to get out of that lifestyle and make the switch. And a lot of the time when people, are ready to do it, they need the help now, not next week or next month.
Thank you for talking with me.
No problem, anytime.
That is Stephen Hunter. He works as an intake worker at the Salvation Army. Now, the current NDP government has promised a safe consumption site and is looking at what site that might be at in downtown Winnipeg. They've outlined that it will be Indigenous-led, and so we will wait to hear more details about that. And as I mentioned, tomorrow we're going to learn a lot more about the Salvation Army. We're going to be broadcasting live at 180 Henry Avenue at Main Street at their Centre of Hope, and that is a space that actually was expanded and changed a number of years ago, but because it was right before the pandemic, a lot of people might have missed all the things that they do there. So there was $14 million spent there, and after 4 years in renovating, the Salvation Army and Booth Center took on the Salvation Army Centre of Hope name. So that's where it came from, but they still have the two buildings. And so September 2019 is when it officially had their ribbon cutting and opened. So they have a capability of 400 beds there. They're separated into a number of different areas, and we're going to learn a lot more about the programs tomorrow. But of course, tomorrow's show isn't really about programs. It really is about people.
I was born in Winnipeg, grew up in the West End, lived in Wolseley forever.
How long have you lived here?
August 26th at 3:30 in the afternoon.
Why do you know that so well?
Because it's life-changing.
I'm from Uganda, me and my two boys, me and my wife.
How old are the kids?
2, and the other one is 3.5.
I stayed here a few times. I was in and out of prison.
Tomorrow, we're going to hear some of the stories of the people who have found themselves at the Salvation Army. All have come there for various different reasons, and we'll hear some of those stories tomorrow on our special live broadcast from there. Now, our show is going to be inside the Salvation Army Centre of Hope, but I want to mention one other story that we're going to have tomorrow because it's going to take us to the street.
I can't leave her in this area. It's too bad. I just got to make it to my friends on Sherbrooke, and I'll be okay. Thank you. Drive safe, guys.
Take care.
Thank you.
So I guess a situation like that, if they say they don't want to ride, I guess that's all you can really do, eh?
Yes, you can't really force it, It's got to be their choice, So we've offered them what we can, and they turned down the help. So I hope she's okay.
That is Corey Funk out with the driver of the Salvation Army's outreach van. Corey recently went on an overnight ride-along with one of the team members on one of the coldest nights of the year. And so that was, I believe it was Tuesday to Wednesday last week when it was so bitterly cold. So that's also a story that we're going to have for you tomorrow as we look at the different things that the Salvation Army does for work in the community. Now, let's get to the news where a similar outreach van is making headlines this morning.
Yes, good morning. And this one is the Winnipeg Regional Health Authority's Street Connections van. That is the van that is used in the Street Connections Evening Harm Reduction Program. Well, it was stolen over the weekend, and the Winnipeg Regional Health Authority is asking people for help getting it back. That van is described as a white 2013 Nissan. It has large Street Connections logos on each side. For now, the Winnipeg Regional Health Authority is going to use a rental vehicle, but they sure would like to get their Street Connections van back. So we'll hear more about that coming up in the news. As well, a Winnipeg man accused of killing his baby boy is on trial this week. Matthew Morrow charged with manslaughter and aggravated assault in connection with the death of his 3-month-old Maven Gillis Morrow. This is something that happened back in 2020. We'll hear more in our next local news at 8:30.
Thank you very much, Heather.
You're welcome.
Well, the driving conditions in Westman continue to be challenging. So one more time, here's the list of school divisions that some schools are closed. Some divisions have canceled buses. So Prairie Spirit School Division says that Manitou area schools, St. Claude area schools, Tree Herndon, Holland area schools, Swan Lake and Somerset area schools all closed. No buses. Still digging out. Park West School Division and Rolling River School Division are open, but no buses there. Brandon's not running rural buses, and Spring Valley School is closed. And call a school if you're not going to attend anywhere in the division, because obviously if travel is required, you might still be facing a challenge yourself. Here in Winnipeg, we really dodged the worst of it, I think, here. If you're on your main routes this morning, you may find them icy, but you're not going to find them full of snow. Call us if you are seeing a problem, though, 788-3093, and that's either in the city of Winnipeg or out on the highways. I'm Marcy Marcusa. You're listening to CBC Information Radio. Might be watching on YouTube, or you might be on the app this morning. However you're joining us, thanks for making time. After 8 o'clock, we're going to continue talking about measles. As you have been hearing, measles is back and spreading in Canada. It is dangerous, it's highly contagious, and spring break is around the corner. So what should you know to keep you and yourself and your kids safe? We're going to talk to Dr. Joss Reimer, who is the president-elect of the Canadian Medical Association, about the situation. Stay with us. World Report, though, is coming up next. The latest in national and international news.
Perceptive panelists, 5 blockbuster books, 4 days of smart and sassy deliberation and debate, but there can only be one winner, the best book to carry us forward. Hi, I'm Ali Hassan, and I'm hosting Canada's favorite book battle, Canada Reads 2024. One book to carry us forward. This week on CBC Radio 1, CBC Listen, and CBC Gem. For more, go to cbcbooks.ca.
The CBC News is next. Coming up in half an hour, it's The Current with Matt Galloway.
The best-selling author Yuval Noah Harari is an historian interested in the big picture. He's also a leading voice on the Israeli left and a strong critic of that country's prime minister, Benjamin Netanyahu. Yuval Noah Harari, coming up on The Current.
This is World Report. This is World Report. Good morning. I'm Marcia Young. Polls are open in some American states. Today is Super Tuesday, the biggest day in the political calendar ahead of the November election. Millions of Democrats and Republicans in 15 states will decide their presidential preference. Richard Madden is following all of this from Washington. Richard, you are an avid observer of the political scene there. What are you watching for today?
Yeah, good morning. There'll be plenty to watch for. Now, on the one hand, former President Donald Trump is widely expected to dominate the 15 primary contests, scooping up the vast majority of delegates, including the big states like California and Texas, in a majority winner-take-all contest. But even if he does sweep the contest, he'll be shy of cementing the majority needed to lock down the presidential nomination. And he's reportedly frustrated that his sole challenger, Nikki Haley, is staying in the race. That's why perhaps the bigger drama is what her plans are after Super Tuesday. Haley has some delegates but is trailing far behind the former president. Now, she hasn't outlined what her plans are, but says about 30 to 40% of Republicans have rejected Trump so far, and she's contrasting herself as a refreshing alternative against two unpopular leaders. Take a listen.
This isn't an anti-Trump movement. This is a pro-America movement. This is something where they're saying they're tired of the chaos. They don't want two candidates in their 80s. They want to make sure that we go back to normal, and they want to see a DC that works for the people instead of people working for government.
Now, if she doesn't drop out, there's speculation that she's setting up a showdown at the Republican convention this summer. Now, on the Democratic side, President Joe Biden is widely expected to win that Super Tuesday sweep, setting up a rematch that, according to polls, 7 out of 10 Americans just don't want.
Richard, you mentioned Joe Biden. What is ahead for him after Super Tuesday?
Yeah, well, Super Tuesday is traditionally the kickoff moment into the general election, and we'll start to see the campaigning hit the accelerator. President Biden will deliver the State of the Union address on Thursday to a divided Congress, and he'll set the tone and lay out the choices for November.
Thank you, Richard.
Thank you.
The CBC's Richard Madden in Washington. Tensions between Germany and Russia are intensifying. The two countries are sparring over the alleged leak of military discussions surrounding Ukraine. German officials accuse Russia of leaking the intercepted recording, and now Germany's defense minister says it was the result of human error. Freelance reporter Rebecca Collard has the details.
At a press conference in Berlin, German Defense Minister Boris Pistorius tries to ease concerns about an explosive audio recording of German officers published in Russian media. He told journalists that it was not the result of a leak from personnel or Russian hacking, but rather carelessness by a participant that seems to have joined the call on the platform WebEx from a connection at a hotel in Singapore. The audio recording was shared by a journalist from the Russian state broadcaster RT. Senior German officers are discussing weapons transfers to Ukraine, and specifically the long-range Taurus missiles, which the German chancellor has been resistant to export to Kyiv, fearing the missiles could be used to strike inside Russia. The officers are also discussing targeting the Kerch Bridge, which connects Russia to occupied Crimea. Russian officials say it's proof that Germany plans to strike Russia and of Western military involvement in Ukraine. In the call, the officers discuss British military on the ground in Ukraine and their tactics. On Monday, the German ambassador to Russia refused to answer questions as he left the Russian Department of Foreign Affairs in Moscow. Pistorius says the incident was a Russian attempt to create divisions between German military and intelligence agencies, and that so far there have been no punitive measures taken against personnel. I will not sacrifice my best officers to Russia's games, said Pistorius. Pistorius also rebuffed questions today about how the leak had hurt Germany's credibility with NATO and other allies. Rebecca Collard for CBC News, Berlin.
Ukraine says it has sunk another Russian warship in the Black Sea. The country's military intelligence agency says the vessel destroyed was a large patrol ship. It can reportedly carry cruise missiles and about 60 crew. Kyiv says its forces are using high-tech sea drones. They're taking aim at targets deep behind the front line. Russian authorities have not confirmed the claim. Japan is expressing concern over China's rapidly expanding military.
A
spokesperson for the cabinet says Beijing poses, quote, the greatest strategic challenge for the peace and stability of Japan and the international community. China has announced an increase in defense spending this year. During an economic statement today at the National People's Congress, Premier Li Qiang said military spending would increase by more than 7%. That budget has more than doubled under Xi Jinping's tenure as president. It also comes as Beijing hardens its stance on Taiwan and increases its military activities in the South China Sea. The economic statement also sets out an ambitious growth target of around 5% overall. Many analysts question that, suggesting it's more likely to be just around 1 or 2%. An alleged gang rape in eastern India has triggered public outrage. Police have arrested some of the men they believe attacked a foreign couple touring the region on motorcycles. The husband and wife say 7 men assaulted them and raped the woman for 2 hours. The incident is again raising the issue of women's safety in India. Journalist Priyata Bajwasi has more from New Delhi.
The weekend attack has sparked anger across India after the woman who was gang raped posted to social media.
As a woman living in India, the question of safety is a constant concern. And the reality is that India is not safe for women.
If you feel completely safe in a place, you will be willing to take risks and, step out of your comfort zone, do the things you want to do. And that is completely missing from the way that we deal with women.
The state where the attack took place has announced a compensation of $12,000 for the couple. But activists say that the country needs to find ways to make the country safer for all women. Women's rights advocate Brinda Adige says India unfortunately puts the onus on women.
Instead of finding ways and means to address the issue of safety and protection of women, the system, the authorities, and the large number of male citizens only talked about how the victim must protect herself. It is time for us to place the responsibility and accountability on the mechanisms.
Nearly 90 rapes were reported in India every day in 2022. That's one woman raped every 18 minutes. But experts say that government data doesn't present a full picture. Many women don't speak out because of the stigma associated with sexual violence in India. Priyata Brajbasi for CBC News, New Delhi.
Here at home, Conservative Jamil Javani will represent the Ontario riding of Durham in the House of Commons. He won the by-election called to replace former Conservative leader Aaron O'Toole. Javani secured over 55% of the vote. Durham has been a Conservative stronghold for the last 20 years. Canada's prairies are in the grips of a multi-year drought. Farmers are concerned about their herds and livelihoods. The CBC's Julia Wong has more.
Talk is fast at this cattle auction in Thorsby, Alberta, 70 kilometers southwest of Edmonton. Auctioneer Chance Martin says the last year and a half, he's noticed farmers selling more livestock, and he says drought is to blame.
If they didn't get more grass or buy more land, everybody as a whole has pared back their herd for sure. A percentage, some have got right out of it.
Many ranchers in the stands here are watching prices and watching the weather.
What are you looking at?
Shane Bucksaw has been worried.
It's a tough game. You have to be very optimistic and hopefully we do get the moisture and everything and hopefully it helps us.
The prairies have been incredibly dry the last few years and there's little moisture in the ground. Recent snowfall helps, but it won't be enough.
Pastures aren't going to be 100% this year no matter how much moisture we get.
Trevor Hadwin is an agroclimate specialist with Agriculture and Agri-Food Canada. He says climate change is playing a role.
Yeah, certainly we're seeing more drought situations with the changing climate. We're seeing more extreme weather and more flops between wet and dry and more extreme situations.
Back in Thorsby, auctioneer Chance Martin worries about the long-term effects if drought persists and herds shrink.
It hurts the whole security of the food in Canada and across the world.
Reinforcing how what we put on the table is all dependent on what falls from the sky. Julia Wong, CBC News, Thorsby, Alberta.
And that is the latest national and international news from World Report. News anytime, cbcnews.ca. I'm Marcia Young.
Good morning, Manitoba. I'm Marcy Marcusa. 8:10 a.m. is the time. You're on CBC 89.3 FM, 990 a.m. on the app or on YouTube. As Westman continues to dig out. Going to get to some bus cancellations and school closures that are still lingering this morning, so we'll go through that list one last time. Although at 8:10 a.m. you're probably already full aware if you're staying in your jammies today. This half hour on the program, speaking of the kids and staying at home, spring break is coming up. And if you're planning on going away for spring break, you may want to make sure you're up to date on your measles vaccinations. Dr. Joss Reimer is going to join me this half hour. She's in studio. We'll have a bit of a primer on when and how to top up your shots and what information you can find and who to ask if you're wondering about your own vaccination schedule, because a lot of times people lose track. Stay tuned. Obviously, we're having the conversation because measles is back and there is some spread in Canada. So we'll talk about that. Right now, speaking of things making news, Heather Wells is here with updates. Good morning.
Good morning. Well, the mother of a 19-year-old who died outside the paw last month is remembering her son as a kind and motivated young man who had his whole life ahead of him. She's looking for answers from the people she believes last saw him. Peter Charlotte was last seen walking away from a home off Highway 283 west of the paw last Saturday. His body was found the next day. The Winnipeg Regional Health Authority is asking for your help finding its stolen Street Connections van. The health authority says that vehicle is used for its evening outreach program. It was stolen over the weekend. It's a white 2013 Nissan. It has large Street Connections logos on each side. If you've seen that vehicle, call police. I'll be back with more Manitoba news at 8:30.
I hope someone just drops it off somewhere and walks away and it's back. You know what I mean?
Exactly. Just park it somewhere, call someone, and it's done.
Just realize your error and move on. Yeah. All right, let's get into what's going on in the weather forecast. Abby, look at that blue sky behind you.
I know, I just looked outside and I'm like, oh, it's now a mesh of blue and gold and color just smashing on the sides of the building. It's really wonderful.
It's pretty.
But I will still, but, however, it's still the triple C, you know, it's clear. It's chilly and it's cold, so you might want to take that into consideration. We've not moved all morning, minus 17 since about 5 o'clock till now. Expect plenty of sunshine today with a transition to a mix of sun and clouds later in the afternoon. And with a brisk temper scene, you should brace yourself for a frosty morning. The wind chill actually feels like a frigid minus 27, but it's going to gradually improve in the afternoon, and we'll see a high of minus 9. But don't be fooled, because tonight, as night falls, we're going to be seeing partly cloudy skies and then a continuation of the cold weather, so it's going to be a bit crispy again later tonight. For folks in Brandon, you're currently dropped at minus 25, also sunny out there. Churchill is at minus 22. 23, and Thompson is at a 22. You made mention of folks in Brandon digging out. I was just looking at the stats of the amount of snow they got yesterday. They got, some areas got 22 centimeters, some areas got 29.
That's a lot of snow.
And Verdun reported about 25 centimeters. Roblin saw 23.
Well, I mean, we know we're in Manitoba and it's the beginning of March. Like, we know it's not over. I think we just all sort of got fooled a bit.
Do I mention Colorado Clipper yet?
Yeah. What? There's more coming?
I'm just saying. You know,
we're turning your mic off.
Okay. Okay. I'm just gonna go mute.
It's all good. It's all good, people. Today we are going to calm down, but yeah, those are high snowfall amounts. Let's get into the commute conditions and what's happening, Corey.
Yeah, really, it's just those highways just southwest of Winnipeg, which are the biggest issue so far. Just leftover snow from that storm we just had. Highways around Carmen, Treeherne, Starbuck, so I'm talking Highway 2, Highway 3, are the biggest issues. I actually got a call from Heather saying, so when you're going westbound on Highway 2 through Starbuck there, it's a little bit slippery, but not actually too bad. It actually clears up after Starbuck, but there's a really long semi carrying like a long kind of cement beam of some sort that's holding up traffic, making it more like 50 kilometers an hour. So people are kind of stuck behind there. If you're heading kind of west Highway 2, look out for that. Other than that, though, it's been pretty clear overall. Here in the city, just one issue to keep an eye out for, particularly at the corner of Portage and Spence. I heard there's a birthday girl in the studio, so just look out for that.
Oh, you guys are outing me now. Wow.
The only thing I'm going to say is make sure you get that tattoo.
And really just enjoy 23. It's a really formative age as well. So
good job, Corey Funk. I'm 50 today.
Get the tattoo.
I turned 50 today.
Congratulations.
Sounds really weird. I'm moving on. Thank you, guys. You're so
Thank
sweet.
you. Give us a call on the CBC commuter line / birthday line today, 204-788-3093.
Awkward. Okay. Back to things I'm comfortable with. Let's give you the school conditions and closure list. School cancellations today. Prairie Spirit School Division has announced that Manitou area schools, St. Claude, Treeherne, Holland, Swan Lake, Somerset, all those area schools are closed today. You probably already know it's right in the heart of where that most snow came. Also, rural school division buses in the Brandon School Division aren't running, and Spring Valley School is closed. Well, measles was eliminated in 1998, but it is back. Now, the highly contagious disease is spreading in some Canadian communities. Yesterday, British Columbia recorded its first case of measles since 2019. As of today, there are more than a dozen cases of measles in Canada. Now, most of them have been reported in Quebec. In Manitoba, we don't have any cases yet. But as I've been alluding to with spring break on the way, there's a lot of families with questions about how you know if you're fully immunized. What does that mean? Are you fully protected? How many years does the stuff last? And what about your kids and other loved ones as well? So with all the information out there about the risks around measles, we're going to have a primer on next about what you need to know about staying safe and helping to prevent a further outbreak. Dr. Joss Reimer is president-elect of the Canadian Medical Association and in studio with us this morning. Good morning.
Good morning. Thanks for having me.
So what is behind the reemergence in measles?
You know, the big thing is really the decrease in vaccinations that we're seeing across the globe. I think with COVID, we sort of hoped that everyone would see how successful vaccines can be. And instead, we saw a lot of misinformation. We saw a lot of people taking advantage of this moment to make money, to sell different products. And what we've seen instead is a decrease. Now, some of that's not around misinformation. Some of it's just because public health had trouble getting into schools, people were staying home. And so some kids just missed their regular vaccines. But whatever the reason is, the lower rates really give something like measles an opportunity to spread because it's so incredibly infectious. So it just needs a small window of susceptible people for it to be able to spread.
What are the symptoms? Remind us of the symptoms.
The big things you're going to see are, you get red eyes, you get flu-like symptoms, so just feeling really unwell, fever, muscle aches. And then there's that classic rash, and sometimes it's even in the mouth. So it's all over the body, in the mouth. What we really worry about, though, is the people who get more ill. And up to 25% of kids who get measles will end up in the hospital. So it's a pretty severe illness because you can get things like pneumonia. You can get encephalitis, which is an inflammation of the brain. And some kids will die with measles. So it's not a benign, it's not a minor illness. It is something we really worry about.
Because we've talked about COVID so much, and so everyone's used to sort of understanding the spread of, of COVID. When you say it's highly contagious, can you contrast measles to COVID in terms of how quickly this can spread when you look at the seriousness of measles?
Yeah, measles is one of the most infectious bugs out there. It's really remarkable because, for every 10 people who are exposed and are susceptible, 9 of them will get infected. So 9 out of 10 susceptible people getting infected is a very high number. And that's because it hangs out in the air. So not only can you get it from interacting with someone, face to face, but it'll stay in the air for up to 2 hours after someone leaves a room. So even if you never interacted with that person, if they happen to have been in the room that you're in 2 hours later, you still could get infected. And people are usually infectious before they have that classic rash. So they may not even know to avoid public spaces because they may not have those classic symptoms yet. So it's tough to know if you're infectious, and it hangs out in the air. So those are the big 2 reasons why it spreads so easily.
What's it like as a doctor to watch this make a comeback because of, as you said, partly because of misinformation and people making choices not to be vaccinated?
Honestly, it's devastating. Because we have the tools and we know how well they work. If you get 2 doses of a measles vaccine, it's 97% effective. It's incredibly good at protecting people. And so when we have those tools and you see all that misinformation out there and you see people who are rightly confused because they're getting bombarded with information, some of it's true, some of it's not true. It's so heartbreaking as a physician to see people, particularly those young kids, seeing them at risk, potentially getting really ill when we know we have the tools to protect them.
So you mentioned 2 shots. How many vaccine shots for full protection? Is it just the 2? And how does it differ by age group and such?
Yeah, that's a great question. So anybody who's born before 1970, we pretty much assume you're immune because measles used to be spreading all the time. So that you've probably been exposed already. If you're born between 1970 and 1985, then we recommend 1 dose. And most of those folks did get 1 dose because it was really regular to get a dose at that point. But double checking is a great idea. And then anyone born after 1985 should get 2 doses. Usually they're given at 1 year of age and again at sort of 4 to 6 years, so that preschool time. But some people may have missed a dose because of COVID, because of other reasons. And the really great thing is that all of the physicians in Manitoba have access to immunization records. So not only can you call your public health office, your local public health office, who can look that up for you, but your physician will also be able to look that up for you and tell you if you've had 0 doses, 1 dose, 2 doses, and they can help get you caught up if you need to be.
Okay, so I'm going to repeat that. Call the public health office or call your physician if you want to check on when's the last, have I had my doses? Do I need new shots? Check on your whole family.
Absolutely.
Those records all exist.
It's a great idea, especially if you're going to travel. We don't have measles in Manitoba yet, but what I'm really worried about is what we're seeing in Quebec. They've had a number of cases with no travel history. So that means they were exposed in Quebec. They were infected in Quebec. So it is spreading already in that province. And, I heard Dr. Singh from Public Health say it, but it's a plane ride away. Yeah. And so when you mention spring break, if folks are going to Europe, if they're going to Quebec, in many other parts of the world, it is possible to bring it back, and we know that our vaccine rates are lower than they should be. You really need about 90% of the population to be immune to prevent a measles outbreak, and we're not there.
Where are we at with herd immunity in Manitoba?
You know, the newest numbers are going to be coming out, I think, next week from Public Health. So I'd say keep your eye out for the new numbers, but we know they've dropped down, that they're below 90. They may even be below 80, but let's wait for the new numbers to come out so we can get a better number.
So we've heard about a blood test to see if you already have immunity. Have you heard about this? How does it work, and do you have to pay for it?
You know, really, because the vaccine is so low risk and it's free, we really, for the most part, say if you don't have any record that you've been immunized, get a dose. I don't want people to have to go through getting a needle poke to have their blood drawn. It's a much bigger needle than an immunization. So if you're born after 1985, you haven't had 2 doses, I wouldn't even worry about testing for immunity. Just get that second dose. We talked about symptoms, but what's the first thing that shows up with measles? Does it present just like a cold? That's a challenge, right? Yeah, the first thing is sort of a general unwell, kind of like the flu. So, fever, you might have some swelling, some people get a cough. It can have a variety of different symptoms. So that's what you're watching for first, but you're not going to know it's measles at first. And that's the tricky part because you are infectious at that point.
Any side effects to the vaccine?
So everything we do in medicine, including, naturopathic therapies, including the drive to the clinic, everything we do has risks, and the measles vaccine is no exception, but they're incredibly low. It's 1 in a million who will have a bad outcome from the vaccine, and 999,999 people who will not have a bad outcome. The numbers are far worse for measles. What we see is, like I said, up to a quarter of kids ending up in the hospital. 1 in 1,000 will get that encephalitis. 1 in 1,000, up to 1 in 1,000 in Canada will die. So, that's serious. Those are scary numbers. So I don't want people to be scared of the vaccine when we know measles is so much scarier.
Thank you very much for coming in. Anything I didn't ask that you feel the public should know this morning?
Check all of your vaccines. We know public health stopped going to the schools for a little bit because we were so wrapped up in dealing with COVID. And so it's possible your kids have missed other vaccines as well. And the last thing we want is to see any other bugs getting that opportunity to spread.
Thank you very much for being in studio.
Thank you so much.
Dr. Joss Reimer is President-elect of the Canadian Medical Association.
Your neighborhood, your community, your country, your world, your news. Your news that matters. News that belongs to you. Your World Tonight. Every night, 7 days a week on CBC Radio 1. On demand on the CBC Listen app and everywhere you get your podcasts.
Time right now is 8:25 a.m. It's -17, nice and sunny, big blue sky out there in Winnipeg. And we have music that is a new release. It's the latest release up next on the show from Métis singer-songwriter Nelson Little. Have a listen. It's called Just Make It Happen.
Sometimes there are things in life that need changing. Sometimes there are things that stay the same. You can't just sit back here without trying, or you'll be crying. foolish can dream and never fear of anything. Imagine life with everything like superstars and limousines and private planes and diamond rings. You can have the finer things like champagne and caviar, cruise ships and classic cars. It doesn't matter who you are. Never say never, ever, ever, just make it happen. Or everything will take forever and never happen. Just make it happen. Yeah, make it happen. Never say never, ever, ever, just make it happen. Anytime, anywhere, anyone, just make it happen. Just make it happen. Yeah, make it happen. Just make it happen.
All right. Are you up now? That's the latest release from Métis singer-songwriter Nelson Little. It's called Just Make It Happen. It is right now 8:28 a.m. on 89.3 FM, 9:90 a.m. on the app or YouTube. Traffic with Corey. Corey's popped in with a little bit of a commute update.
Yeah, I got a call from Timmy. He said eastbound Sterling Lion, there's a bit of a slow-rolling dump truck going there, about 50 kilometers an hour, maybe a little less than that. So just look out for that. Might be a little bit slow going. He also said that you've got a birthday buddy. His daughter, Joanne, turns 9 today. So there
happy
you go,
birthday, Joanne.
birthday buddy. Yes, exactly. So that's very nice. As well, just keep an eye on those highways there, particularly Highway 2, Highway 3, southwest of Winnipeg there. Poor driving conditions overall. Heard from Heather that around Starbuck, it's not super bad, a little bit slippery in some places there. It does clear as you get kind of west, but look out for also a very slow going semi with a real long cement beam, like one of those extra long semis just holding up traffic a little bit. So do look out for that if you're heading westbound on Highway 2. If you see anything else going on out there, though, give me a call, 204-788-3093.
I'm going to make your day in the next 30 seconds. My phone's blowing up now with photos because I said I was 50 on the air, and people are sending me photos that I didn't even know existed. So look at that.
Oh, look at that. Oh, whoa. But okay, I see it's a colorful wig, red and yellow, like poofy, like ball-shaped wig.
Yeah.
What's the context?
This is me at Halloween in 1986, man.
What is that? Who were you? Just
I was just like the best 80s punk rocker you ever saw in your life. That is the worst photo.
That eyeshadow or whatever you're using is something special.
It's making a comeback.
I know. Yeah, maybe this year for Halloween, try it again.
I better share that with the listeners so they can share in the laugh. I'll do that after. By the way, if you are listening, just a reminder that the current is coming up. We've been talking a bit about Super Tuesday this morning on the program and on World Report, but we're going to hear some more analysis coming up as polls show that Trump is ahead of Biden, but neither candidate is well liked. Trump is facing legal woes and Biden is trying to rally an apathetic Democratic base. So Matt Galloway is going to dig into that right after your CBC Winnipeg News.
This is CBC News. Good morning. I'm Heather Wells in Winnipeg. At 8:30, sunny. It is minus 17 right now. A cool start to Tuesday, but we will warm up to minus 9 with just a few clouds moving in this afternoon. The mother of a 19-year-old who died outside the Paw last month is remembering her son as a kind, motivated young man who had his whole life ahead of him. Now she's looking for answers from the people she believes last saw him. CBC's Rosanna Hempel reports.
Val Charlotte is piecing together her son's final hours, and she's desperate for answers. Mounties say Peter Charlotte's body was found along Highway 283 west of the Paw last Sunday. Police say he was last seen walking away from a home the afternoon before. Charlotte doesn't know the family Peter was with and is suspicious about the circumstances leading up to her son's death. She says he wasn't wearing a jacket or shoes.
I feel like I'm not even here, like I'm somewhere else. It's not real.
RCMP say they don't suspect foul play, but are awaiting autopsy results. For Charlotte, she's angry and frustrated and says officers aren't doing enough. Mounties say their investigation is ongoing. Rosanna Hempel, CBC News, Winnipeg.
A Winnipeg man accused of killing his baby boy is on trial this week. Matthew Morrow is charged with manslaughter and aggravated assault in the death of 3-month-old Maven Gillis Morrow. Maven was found unconscious while being watched by his father in January of 2020. The little boy died in hospital. Morrow has pleaded not guilty. The judge-only trial started yesterday with testimony from Maven's mother. She testified the baby had been injured on multiple previous occasions when Morrow was watching him. The court also heard Morrow's call to 911 on the day Maven was found unconscious. He told the operator he went to check on the infant and found the baby not breathing. The trial is scheduled to last 3 weeks. The Winnipeg Regional Health Authority wants your help finding its stolen Street Connections van. The Health Authority says that vehicle used for its evening outreach program was stolen on the weekend. The van drives around the city 6 nights a week, providing harm reduction services. It's a white 2013 Nissan with large Street Connection logos on each side. The WRHA says its evening outreach program will continue operating in a rented vehicle with Street Connection signage on the roof. Anyone who spots the stolen van, though, or who has information about where it might be, is asked to contact Winnipeg Police. A Conservative candidate has won a federal by-election in Ontario. Jamil Javani will be the new MP for Durham, just east of Toronto. He's the son of an African immigrant to Canada, and in his victory speech last night, he said his win sends a message to the Prime Minister that the Liberal Party doesn't have a monopoly on diversity.
In the candidates we nominate for the upcoming general election, and in the room right now, where you can look around and see the diversity of Canada is present here, you will see that Justin Trudeau better get used to it, because it's not changing anytime soon.
The by-election was called in January after longtime MP for the area, Aaron O'Toole, announced his retirement from politics. Polls opened this morning across the U.S. for Super Tuesday. 16 states and 1 U.S. territory picking presidential candidates. Donald Trump and Joe Biden are both expected to win all their party contests today. In Minnesota, a campaign is underway among some Democrats, though, to vote uncommitted on the ballot instead of Joe Biden. Jaylani Hussein is the co-chair of the Abandon Biden campaign.
The protest vote of uncommitted is something that many Democrats can do, and it does not impact the president. Biden, he'll still be the nominee the way it looks like now. But it is a protest vote because we want as many people to come out and say to President Biden that we're uncommitted because of his policy on Gaza.
Minnesota is home to a large Somali Muslim community, and the Vote Uncommitted campaign follows a similar one in Michigan last week by that state's Arab American population. And a story about the rise and fall of the BlackBerry has won a major award.
What do you call it? It's called a BlackBerry. Huh.
The chaotic comedy about the iconic smartphone won a $50,000 prize for the Best Canadian Feature from the Toronto Film Critics Association. That award was handed out last night. Director and star Matt Johnson was there to accept the prize. And Swan Song, a profile of Canadian ballerina Karen Kane, won the $50,000 Best Canadian Documentary Award. You can find more news updated throughout the day. Just head to cbc.ca/Manitoba.
Wow, man. Now that everyone outed my 50th birthday, listeners, Kevin and Gloria Van Camp sent in a photo of me reporting. I'm standing on a tube of their diked home during a flood in 2014. Look at this.
Look at all you've achieved in those 50 years.
I've covered a lot of floods, Heather Wells. Hey, thank you very much for the morning. Appreciate you.
Happy birthday, Marcy.
Thank you, buddy. Appreciate it. Abby, last word.
Chilly start in the city, but don't let that coldness dampen your spirit. We're going to see plenty of sunshine today, transitioning into a mix of sun and cloud. We're aiming for a high of -9. Brandon is currently brisk at -25. Meanwhile, Thompson is at 22 and icy at -23 up in Churchill.
All right, thanks, Abby.
You're welcome.
And Abby made me jollof rice.
Oh, Marcy.
What a gift that is. That's my supper, my birthday supper. I love that. Corey, what do we need to say?
Look out on those highways there, still in southwest Manitoba, still pretty covered, pretty treacherous in some parts. So do look out for that. Other than that, things are pretty clear. And once again, happy birthday,
Thank
Marcy.
you. Gosh, I work with lovely people. Corey Funk, Abby Adeyemi, Brad Lillies, thank you guys. As well in our news center this morning, Joni Nicolo, Darren Bernhardt, Megan Ketchison, as well as Heather Wells, all of our hardworking associate producers, our leaders in unit, Nellie Gonzalez and Leif Larson. Thank you all for your work. Tomorrow, we are live at the Salvation Army, so 180 Henry at Main Street. We're going to hear the stories of how people come to live there and stay there, whether it's for emergency or longer stay. So we sure hope you can tune in. Take care, be well, Manitoba.